evening. We have a quorum. May we have the roll call, please, Gail?
Mayor Sticks?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Haney?
Here.
Councilmember Blatz is here. Councilmember thank you. Councilmember Francina?
Here.
Councilmember Hvac?
Here.
Thank you, Gail. And welcome all to the May 24th, 2022 meeting of the Ojai City Council. Randy, do you mind saying the pledge this evening?
Sure, I'd love to, Mayor.
Thank you.
Right hand over your heart, repeat after me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Randy. And approval of the agenda, motion to approve?
So moved. Second?
Okay, roll call, please, Gail?
Councilmember Blatz?
Yes.
Councilmember Francina?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Haney?
Yes.
Mayor Sticks?
Yes.
Councilmember Hvac?
Yes.
Thank you, Gail. And Mr. City Attorney, we have something to report out, or you have something to report out, rather.
Yes. Thank you, Madam Mayor. The City Council met in closed session at their last meeting to consider two items. One was labor negotiations regarding all unrepresented employees, and no reportable action was taken. And second was regarding a lawsuit filed by William Bradley Tully against the city, and the council provided direction to defend the lawsuit. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. And no presentations or commission reports tonight, correct, James? Okay. I would like to take a moment of silence. The council would like to take a moment of silence to recognize and support the town of Uvalde and Robb Elementary School in Texas, where 14 children were shot today and one teacher. And just to quote Gandhi, nonviolence is a supreme law. By it alone can humankind be saved. So let's just take a moment here in solidarity for that community.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you all.
Mayor, I have one more thing too.
Yeah.
It's Councilman Francina's birthday tonight, and I know I didn't bring her a cupcake or a cake, but I still think that we can acknowledge this wonderful woman, her contributions to this community by singing.
No.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Susan. Happy birthday to you. Cha-cha-cha.
39 again.
Speech, Susan?
I'm just glad it's tonight and not 2 weeks ago.
Yes, absolutely. Well, I'd like to thank you, Randy, for doing that, and I'd like to reiterate and thank you so much for all that you've given to our community for so long.
Thank you.
Really, you are
I
a
didn't
treasure.
expect this. Thank you.
New
It's an honor
tradition.
and pleasure to work with all of you, and I mean that from the bottom of my heart. Thank you.
That's what you get for hanging out with me.
Yeah. I have grown.
Whoa.
In all ways.
Wonderful. Love that attitude. All right, well, let's move on to public communication. Any public communication, Gail?
I'm sorry.
That's okay. A lot going on tonight.
Oh, you got that many?
Okay.
Can't make me out of it.
Okay.
So these are public communication, these are consent.
Consent has a
Thank you. Okay, for public communication. Public communication, we have Nick Ojai, Jeffrey Starkweather, and Bill Miley. So,
Oh, no, not that.
I would say the good, the bad, and the ugly, but
Keep separated from us.
that might get me in trouble.
Good evening and happy birthday,
Thank you.
Souza.
We go way back.
My name's Nick Ojai. I'm a local architect. I first laid eyes on Ojai when I was about 10 years old, and then several years later, after I'd finished or was working in architecture school, my folks moved here in 1967. I've been interested in the town as an architect and visually for a long time, and I'd like to say I really take my hats off to all of you working in law enforcement, working on the city council, because you have to do two things which seem so opposite. You have to protect what's here and the sort of the culture, but you also have to have the eyes to look a little bit beyond and see what's happening. And of course, today in all our lives, it's, however long we've lived, there are tremendous pressures that are outside of Ojai that are affecting how we need to look just over the horizon. And that is climate change is one of them. And the effect of our finance system creating a tremendous amount of wealth in a small group of people, and a lot of other people struggling. We all talk about it. So I just want to, and part of that pressure has been created by our transportation system. The fact that most of us, in fact, I'm sure all of us arrived here in an automobile and will get home in an automobile. Or maybe somebody was on a bicycle. Susan, were you on a bicycle?
Normally I would be.
Okay.
No, I barely made it from the top of North Signal.
Anyway, I just, I wanted to make a word in your heads for looking just beyond today to a town where there more people can do more of their life without having to get in a car, at least 5 days a week, not every day, not every moment, but have choices as adults. I mean, we have 31 flavors of ice cream when we go to the ice cream store. We have one way of getting around, most of us. That's something out of whack there. That's why 5 years ago when I was talking to the school district board, or slipping in my plan to their school district site, which is just down the road, and such an important part of downtown, I created this this little. This is a sketch. I didn't show them this sketch, but this is just for you guys to hand around. It's a little sketch. Get rid of that. I don't know how you get rid of that. Anyway. Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
It's just a little sketch that shows a street that's just for people on foot. And I think Ojai will soon get to a point where having a street, however short or long or whatever, that's just for people on foot, to get home, to get to their work loft, the work apartment loft, to get to school, and will be very much right in the present moment of solutions to the town. So I just want to leave you with that. Thank you very much.
Nick,
Thank you, Nick.
could you point us to the street or describe it?
Okay, this is just a wild little thing that I made for myself so that I could understand.
Let the chief see it too.
It's the school district site, and the little curvy dark street is a pedestrian street.
The
Yeah.
blue, the blue?
The blue is the creek right
That's the
next
creek.
door, which the city has to figure out how to have water running.
The storage tank course.
And the pedestrian street leads off from Attila and ends up at the bus going to Ventura. And people would live in the street, there would probably be coffee shops at one end or the other, and there would be a real bus station, not just a bench. And this might be 5-10 years down the road, but it would be something worth considering. And considering people on foot, that's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nick.
May I
Yep.
comment quickly? Nick, I'm allowed to, Nick, hey, I'm going to comment. I love your comment about a real bus station, because I have seen those in Oregon, where it's not our shameful bench in front of Bank of America with no shade, you know, it's not that. It almost looks like, well, how can I say it? Like a courtyard in a beautiful high-end library or something. And people are very comfortable while they're waiting for the bus. And it's all kinds of people, not just the ones without cars. It's people who choose the convenience of public transportation. And for that to succeed, we all know it has to be as comfortable and convenient as a private car. And we don't have a choice, because we have a narrow 2-lane road that's, someday that traffic's not gonna move if we don't cut into it.
So we have challenges, we have state
It's not a back and forth
Yeah,
not on the
we've
agenda.
got
It's my
just
birthday.
yes, it is your birthday. Just a reminder that we are in public communication 3 minutes, and we don't comment, although we can always add something to the agenda.
Mayor, I just wanted to briefly state, Pete, we didn't have a presentation tonight. Thank you for yours.
Okay, next we have Jeffrey Starkweather and then Bill Miley. And thank you for sticking to the 3 minutes. Appreciate it.
Good evening, city council members, citizens, mayor, and happy birthday. I may go back as far as anybody in knowing Sousa, because we went to high school together.
I knew your sister in elementary.
That's true. She was 4 years younger, but yeah. Anyway, and I also want to support what Nick's talking about walkability. So I'm a big believer in that. By the way, when we came to Ojai, we gave up one of our cars. We have one car. My wife and I share it. I use it most of the time because I go to meetings, but she actually goes to meetings in her pedicista. So anyway, it can be done here in Ojai. I just wanted to reflect and ask, and I know Mr. Hvac is going to speak to this, but I spent 2 very, very, very long nights at 2 school trustee meetings and spent long, long hours preparing for them. And but we've gotten this issue of the swimming pool, and it was stated to me numerous times by officials, I won't mention names, but that, we're not including the town in any kind of programming because they said they didn't want to participate, which I thought that can't be true from knowing you all. Anyway, I've just found out today that comment came about from a time before the current superintendent was even here. Some of you may not have even been on city council then. I don't know, but it's kind of, so I think the issue is around whether we have a 35-meter pool that just serves the high school, or we have the 50-meter pool, which is what they promised us during the campaign, a community aquatic center. Now, I've been arguing that we need a feasibility study so we can understand the costs of both, how that would be programmed, and whether it's even feasible with the operating costs, because they are expensive. But one of the key things, as the design people say, programs before design. And we have been dealing with designs before programs. So you have a rec department, and I know Bill's going to talk about this, but I think this is a great opportunity for the rec department, the rec board, and this board to talk about what kind of programming could be held at that community pool and make it a community assets. And it might even be something that attracts students to our school system, which would be really the only sustainable way we can finance our schools, because most of our funding comes from states, 15,000 per student, and, you know, coming up with schemes to make money without adding students is not a long-term solution. So thank you.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Next, we have Bill Miley.
Good evening. For the record, my name is Bill Miley. I have 2 items. First, I have a secret about Sousa. How
Those are going in my memoir.
long, not how old, how long she's lived in Ojai. 66 years. That's a really nice number, too. The second item is about the school board's school district bond program to build a community aquatic center. As a community invested citizen, I recently have participated in 2 school board meetings on the 11th of May and last night. Last night there was a robust discussion about throughout the evening. The value of making this a community aquatic center beyond the school district needs has emerged, in my opinion, very strong. And many others think that too. Several past community efforts tried to develop a community pool, and we know it didn't work. Now it seems likely to occur. The potential for a valley-wide collaborative effort to make this happen, I and others believe, is in the wind. Last evening, there was a focus on the choice for a school pool size, location, cost, by school bond funds already approved, and especially how the community use would be available. But importantly, the operating cost, the maintenance cost, and even more important, the revenue sources to pay for it all. With climate change heating us up, an aquatic center cooling is needed on top of all the inherent values that an aquatic center will provide to schools, children, youth, families, swim teams, adults, seniors, folks with disabilities, and others. Several of us last evening spoke of the need, value, and motivation of our city government, its willingness to become actively supportive and involved with the school district to enable this to happen. It will benefit our whole valley for almost forever. In the sense of the youngest of us now, it will provide 50 to 100 years of really good aquatic function for all of us in the valley. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill.
Mayor, can I just note, since the pool is the hot topic, I think, at the moment, so I'll just note that we are planning to have a discussion on that item on the June 2nd Parks and Rec meeting. So anybody who's interested in listening or participating in that's when that item's scheduled at this time.
Great. Thank you, James.
Mayor, one other thing, you know, I've, if I can, you know, I've met with a school board member. I've asked this council and I've asked James to figure out how to do a joint meeting, and the pool would be one of the topics. And I don't know why these two bodies can't figure it out. We're not each other's enemy. And if anything, the community at large looks up to these two bodies as the adults in the room, and sometimes we're not acting like it. So again, I'm going to ask that we figure out how to do a joint session. Wherever the TV is, I'll just look it in the school board in the eye and say, you folks need to figure out how to help us out by meeting together and meeting the challenges of this community together and not at each other.
Thank you, Randy. Any public comment on Zoom, Gail?
If there's anyone in the Zoom queue who would like to speak, please use the raise hand function now.
Okay, let's move on to the consent calendar. We do have 2 public comments, so let's start with Janet Cull, item J.
My name is Janet Call. I live in Ojai, and I have been a trolley driver for 13 years. The Ojai trolley is unique, quaint, and I believe essential to the culture of Ojai. Some of our riders use the trolley as their only social outlet, Many travel to the grocery store, bank, post office, hospital, and medical appointments. But for most, the trolley is their only mode of transportation to and from work. Over the last 2 years, the trolley service, like many other local businesses, has suffered, specifically with reduced ridership, loss of drivers, and most importantly, the inability to recruit new qualified drivers. Staff has done an extensive salary survey of nearby transit agencies and has outlined a plan to keep our recruiting ability competitive, to attract new drivers, and to retain existing drivers. The modest salary adjustment the staff recommends is the first for the transit service in 10 years. Staff has determined that adequate funding for this plan will be available from government COVID relief funds and will not impact the general fund. I know the council votes on many things with the city pocketbook in mind, but I hope you'll put a little heart into your decision. Come ride the trolley, meet your constituents, experience how needed the trolley is and how appreciative our riders are. Please show your support by accepting the recommendations your staff has made regarding Ojai's vital community transportation service. Please vote for the trolley.
Thank you, Janet, and thank you for your service.
You thank me twice a month. What we need is your support.
Okay, next we have Bill Miley and item L.
Did we pull that?
Good evening, Bill Miley.
I don't know.
This is about items L, the local road safety plan. Because I am one of the 2 Ojai City representatives of the Citizens Advisory Committee for the Ventura County Transportation Commission, this especially interests me. With the city's contract grant writing firm, California Consultants, ready to aid us in writing grants, this will be a valuable document once awarded, $40,000, and the street safety study completed, reviewed, and enacted. I especially want to see the review of our downtown Ojai Avenue results between North Ventura Street going east to Bald Street, as in my opinion, this really needs very serious study and adjustments. Vehicle congestion, vehicle noise, sit outside in a restaurant like Nick and I did yesterday and watch and listen to the trucks and big mufflers go by. It's just sad to see that the businesses have to put up with that. Bicycle risk, lack of dedicated bicycle lanes, and something hard to pin down, what I call and others would call the gentleness of Ojai's ambience. It's not in the downtown area when it's busy with vehicles. It's not there. So I'm looking forward to this grant. Thanks.
Thank you, Bill. Any comments on Zoom, Gail?
If anyone in the Zoom queue would like to speak on the consent calendar, please raise your hand now. Use the raise hand function now.
Okay, all right, motion to approve.
Move to approve.
I'll second.
Okay, roll call, please, Gail?
Mayor Sticks,
Yes.
Councilmember Haney,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem, Councilmember Wyrick,
Yes, with special appreciation for Jay.
Councilmember Francina,
Yes.
Councilmember Blatz,
Yes.
Jay.
Okay, thank you. All right, let's move on to discussion items. Number 2, to ratify the appointments of the arts commissioners.
Yeah, and if I can just add real quick, closing that out. So I do want to say for the record that the city council was immediately supportive of the recommendations for the trolley program. And so Janet, your comments are well taken. And then I also just want to note that as soon as that was presented to the council, it was immediately supported. So thank you for approving that. So moving forward to the ratification of the appointments of the Arts Commissioners. So we have moved to the new process, and this is our first appointments for the Arts Commission under the new process, where commissioners to the Arts Commission are appointed by in successive order by individual city council members subject to the ratification by the full city council. We had talked recently, because we've been shifting over to this new approach, and so the last time we had brought a couple of appointments forward, the council had expressed interest in having an opportunity for each person's appointee to come to the council meeting and give a little introduction of themselves and why they're interested in serving the commission. And so this is the first where we are following that process. And so today, the two items are the two appointments that are being made is Christine Steiner to fill one vacancy, which I believe we have determined that the date was an error. We had written for the term ending May 22nd, 2022, but that term actually ended 2 days ago and is now in place until May of 2026. And then appointing Christine Steiner to that seat until May of 2026, and then appointing Nigel Chisholm to to a midterm vacancy, which ends May 26, 2024. And it's a little bit confusing because both commissioners were already serving, but with recent resignations, they're being appointed in these spots, and so it's a little bit confusing. But we have both commissioners here to give an introduction and answer any questions.
Great. Any questions from council before Nigel
I
and
have a
Christine?
question. Can you clarify, maybe you mentioned it, but
Sure.
maybe I missed it. With these two appointments, are there any other vacancies?
There are two other vacancies. I believe we received appointments for those vacancies and that they're going to be on the June 14th meeting. But so this will have 3 appointed with 2 vacancies remaining for that next meeting.
Okay. Christine and Nigel, who would like to go first?
Ladies first.
Okay.
Thank you. I should note first that I had dental surgery this afternoon, but I didn't want to miss the opportunity to be here. So if I slur or if I faint, you'll know why. So Mayor Sticks and members of the council, I'm honored to stand for reappointment to the Arts Commission. The Arts Commission, as you know, has had a bumpy year, but it's embarking on a fresh start. We have new leadership chaired by Nigel. We have a new composition from 7 to 5, making us consistent with the other commissions, and soon we'll have new members. And I've personally benefited from warm and productive discussions with Randy Haney and with Bill Wyrick, and I'm grateful to both of them for their time. A bit about me. I've lived full-time in Ojai since 2013, so nearly a decade. I'm a strong supporter of the arts in Ojai, of the Ojai Music Festival, the Ojai Playwrights Conference, the Carolyn Glass O'Bailey Foundation, the Ojai Studio Artists. I've provided pro bono advice to artists and to arts organizations in Ojai. I have works of Ojai artists, living and deceased, in my art collection. I buy art from the 2 contemporary art galleries here in town. And so, in short, I'm deeply involved in the arts in Ojai, and I look forward to continuing my service for the city on behalf of the arts in Ojai. A bit more about me. I'm an art lawyer. I represent artists, museums, collectors, and entities that commission public art, such as real estate developers, hotels, public agencies, and the like. And prior to private practice, I worked for large cultural organizations in-house. And while the needs and resources of Ojai may be on a different scale from those entities, nevertheless, this experience gives me an understanding of and sensitivity to the complex communities and organizations, and also the discipline to join my colleagues in carrying out our duties. And so I'll just conclude by saying that I take seriously the duties that the Art Commission has under the ordinance, and that is to advise and make recommendations to you, the council, on the needs, resources, and opportunities in the arts, and to work cooperatively with the city and with arts organizations in promoting arts and culture in the city, and to encourage and stimulate arts activities, and to oversee the public art program. So in conclusion, as I said earlier, I look forward to continuing to serve, and I thank you for my initial appointment, and I look forward to my reappointment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Christine. Nigel?
Nobody's going to ask for any questions.
Oh.
We'll add another 5 or 6 minutes. All right. Happy birthday, Susan.
Thank you, Nigel.
I'm not going to mention that you've been here for 66 years, which is news to everybody who's watching now, because I thought, no way have you been here 66 years. It could only be 36 at the most. But I hope you've had a wonderful day, and if anybody deserves to come down here in a car instead of their bicycle, it's you today. So that's good for you. Right, good evening all. Nigel Chisholm. I'm not going to speak very much about me, as a matter of fact, because frankly I know all of you, and everybody out there on the TV. If they don't know who I am, then where have they been over the last 20 years or so? But I have got some prepared comments, so I appreciate your time listening to them. Mayor Sticks, council members, thank you for your continued service to our community. It's a tough job, and you're never going to please anybody, or even somebody, if you're lucky. However, you commit your time and energy in measure that most of this community will never understand. The job that you do goes far beyond the bounds of council meetings, and I believe that it would benefit all if you took a moment to explain on camera the demands of your time over and above sitting in the chairs that you currently occupy. I'm pretty sure that everyone thinks they can do your job. They would be wrong. Of course, with the elections right around the corner, they could always try. Tonight, having finished out my current term on the Arts Commission, I'll be renominated to a second term. I'm currently the chair, as you know, and I'm very honoured to have risen to that level. I'm not entirely sure I deserve it, but there we are, and we're going to get it sorted out. I'm grateful to Councilmember Blatz for his trust in me. I hope the rest of the council see fit to trust in me once again. Also tonight, Commissioner Steiner will be renominated by Mayor Sticks. Mayor Sticks, you have my thanks and gratitude for her renomination. I'd like to make clear that Commissioner Steiner has all the tools necessary to be a positive and effective member of the Arts Commission. Over the past few months, along with Vice Chair West, I've worked closely with her, and I look forward to continuing that work together as we move forward on the journey of reimagining the Ojai Arts Commission and returning it to its rightful place as an incubator of the arts in Ojai and a strong friend to everyone involved in the arts or whom wishes to be so. To our artistic community, I state clearly tonight that the Ojai Arts Commission is on your side. Our goal is to help you reach your goal in the best, most positive and effective manner possible. We encourage you to attend our meetings and to speak to us about how we can support you. We will listen. Your commissioners and the commission as a whole will become much more accessible and visible in this community over the next year as we look closely at every area of our work and redefine it to meet its mandate. We're all volunteers, but at the pleasure of council, we work for you and we want to work for you. I appreciate the support of council over the past few months as we brought the Ojai Arts Commission into line with all other appointed commissions. It was timely and it was necessary. As we move forward together, it's imperative that we do not find ourselves back in the same situation as before. One of the reasons for the changes was that the appointment process was antiquated and not fit for purpose. In large part, it was responsible for the challenges that the Arts Commission has faced over many years. We cannot go back to a place where a single person appoints whomever they want to this commission. Changing that person from the mayor to the next council member in line does not alleviate that issue. The approved ordinance states clearly that the council should consult with the chair when an appointment is considered. It doesn't say must, it says should. What we're talking about here is simply best practices. I'd strongly urge all council members to follow best practices and consult on any appointments with the chair, not only of the Arts Commission, but of all appointed commissions. You should know that this particular chair will bring opinions and agreed options from all members of the Arts Commission, as they will know exactly what is required to be able to do their job properly and address all areas of the arts as is their mandate. Placing the chair of any appointed commission in the position of having to object in public to a nominated individual due to a lack of consultation is unnecessary, unwise, and unwarranted. I feel confident that the good cooperation thus far between the Arts Commission and the Council will continue. From June, the reformed Ojai Arts Commission will get down to work, and we will make you proud of us. I promise you. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Nigel. Any comments on Zoom, Gail?
If there's anyone in the Zoom queue who would like to comment on agenda item 2, please use the raised hand function now.
Okay, let's move on to discussion.
Quick comment.
Yeah, Bill?
I just want to say that I really appreciate comments by both commissioners and say that I'm confident that the way the commission is going under the chair's leadership is going to be a broad, integrated view of the commission's role in the arts of life of the community, and I appreciate that very much.
Comment? Yeah. I appreciate very much that both of you are here in person. In the past, where's Nigel? Oh, there you are, behind Gail. Okay, I can just see each half of you. Yes, I think it's important that new appointees come to council, and, that we meet them in person, or if we've already met them, you always learn something new from being, by giving a little speech. It was really good. Thank you. What I would like to know, if I may ask, are you following Mark Whitman's, this is not meant to be controversial. I just want to know if you were able to attend or watch the video of the the proposal from Mark Whitman for the Chaparral property, and I'd like to send you the video link. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about. Yeah, it's just I don't want to make it complicated, but I think it's important to follow because there's a lot of community input and interest in, of one of many proposals to have an art hub at Chaparral. Yeah.
Right, so I did receive the video, I have watched it, and I am aware of what's going on with Mark and the other people involved in that project. On a personal level, I'm wholly supportive of that avenue of approach. With regard to the Commission, I can't speak for the Commission because we haven't yet taken a position on that. However, we have had conversations about it, and it is in my mind that we will have Mark Whitman and whomever else is involved in that project come and speak to the Arts Commission, possibly in June, or if not then hopefully in July, to explain to us exactly what they would like and see how we can help, or even if we should get involved with the support of that.
Thank you, that's exactly what I wanted to know. Thank you very much.
Move ratification.
Yeah, any other comments from?
I'm sorry.
No?
I'm sorry.
Okay, I just want to say thank you to Christine and Nigel, and I loved your comments, and I love the whole idea of Ojai being, the Arts Commission being an incubator, and thank you for your leadership, Nigel and Christine. You're clearly deeply involved in the arts community here, and what a gift to have both of you, and so thank you. It's exciting. So it sounds like Bill has a motion.
Yeah, I'm ready to move ratification of the both appointments.
Second. Let Randy second. Yeah.
Okay, roll call, please, Gail.
Mayor Sticks,
Yes.
Councilmember Francina,
Yes.
Councilmember Blatz,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Haney,
Yes.
Councilmember Wyrick.
Yes.
All right. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for coming, too. And I hope you heal well, Christine.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Nigel.
Yeah.
I'm sorry I spoke so long. I didn't know you guys had already passed this, but thank you very much.
Thank you very much for coming.
No, thank you. 'Cause
Thank you.
the public likes to hear that.
Yes.
Thank you.
And I was going to tell him, we do have a trolley. We do have a choice. You don't have to walk. We do have a trolley that's been running for a while. So
Yeah.
anyway, thank you all
Well,
very
pass
much.
on the good news to the
Thank you.
drivers. Thank you.
Yeah.
Let's go ride the trolley.
Okay, yes, let's do it. Okay, let's move on to item number 3, to consider introducing an ordinance to revise the city's gas-powered landscape equipment ordinance. Is there a staff report, James?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mayor. So we actually had brought a report on this recently. I believe it was the April 12th meeting, regular city council meeting. We provided a status update after 2 years of enforcement of the city's gas-powered landscaping equipment prohibition. And we had talked about a few items, and the city council asked us to prepare an ordinance on focused on those items. The 3 key issues was, item 1 was that chainsaws had not previously been included in the city's prohibition. The prohibition was limited originally to hedge trimmers, lawn edgers, leaf blowers, non-riding lawn mowers, pole hedge trimmers, pole saws, and string trimmers. We were asked to consider whether, or bring an ordinance back with chainsaws added to that list. We also were asked to develop some language to make it more clear that the property owners could be held responsible if a landscaper, for example, was using the equipment, that the city could hold either homeowners, tenants, or property managers responsible as well. So, and then lastly, the third item was with language to increase the penalties for violations of these prohibitions. Previously, the penalties were $50 for a first violation and $100 for a second, with a $250 penalty for any subsequent violations. Staff has prepared an ordinance that does each of those three things. The penalties are recommended to be increased to $100 for the first violation, $200 for second, and $500 for subsequent violations. That is the language included in the ordinance. The ordinance also includes language clarifying that the additional parties can be held responsible. And lastly, the ordinance includes the language related to chainsaws, which we note we had identified two options. We ended up including option one in the draft ordinance. Option one for regulating chainsaws would be requiring a permit for any use of a gas-powered chainsaw, versus option two, which would be allowing a gas-powered chainsaw for heavy-duty use, so only when heavy-duty usage is required. However, the reason why we proceeded with option one in the proposed ordinance is because option two, we started to realize that there were several challenges with enforcement. And so what we've recommended in the ordinance is option one, which would require a permit for any use of a gas-powered chainsaw. And so the ordinance is prepared and is available for City Council to introduce. It would need to be introduced tonight and then adopted at a subsequent meeting, and then it would go into effect shortly thereafter. So tonight's item is for introduction of the ordinance, and we're happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, James. Any questions? Susan?
I feel a little bit guilty about this because I may have been the one that recommended some of this. But I don't think I ever intended, I still want to have a warning without a penalty.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't feel like, I don't know how my colleagues feel. I feel like it's always fair to have a warning. And then my understanding was that if they complied, whatever they paid would be refunded at some point.
Okay. Those are options. The ordinance as drafted doesn't include that. The warning doesn't necessarily need to be in the ordinance. If we have direction to give a warning before implementing fines, that can be something that we do relatively simply. I'm thinking through the other part and whether that would need to be in the ordinance. What do you think?
If I understand the question, would be if somebody uses a gas-powered chainsaw without a permit and then comes into compliance, meaning the next time they use one, they get the permit. That's sort of a hard one to structure. The scenario where a landscaper, corporate landscaper who doesn't have electric equipment comes in and buys it and we waive the last fine, that's a bit more conducive to that approach. For a gas-powered chainsaw violation, I guess it could be anybody who comes in with proof of payment or proof of purchase of a electric chainsaw could have the first fine waived if only the first fine. That could be something we could structure.
Something reasonable where, there's some cost recovery for staff time.
Mm-hmm.
But we just want to give as much, in my opinion, as much motivation for compliance.
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha. I think that could be structured through, not in the ordinance, but additional direction on how to enforce it.
How to enforce it, yeah.
And that would be because the city manager is already authorized in the enforcement process to waive a citation if circumstances warrant, so it'd be to give that direction.
Yeah, and we did do that. I'll just quickly note, we did do that the first time around. I think the council had directed for the first 6 months to give that option,
Yeah.
so we did do that, and so that would be an option. So
Just
Okay.
in case someone is new or, I just know that amount of money is a hardship, but we do need to clean up the air and, and reduce noise pollution, so, we have to balance those two things.
Other questions, Randy?
So we initiated this in January 28th of 2020. And regarding Councilwoman Francina's statement about how to encourage people to do this versus discourage them, we've given them 2 years
That's true.
of a lot of leniency.
That's all true.
Can we,
So the question would be, you know what, I'm gonna save it, and I'll wait if there's any public comments, and then I'll save it for discussion.
okay, thank you. Any public comments on Zoom, Gail?
We have, we have no hard copy public, or live public comments. If there's anyone in the Zoom queue who would like to speak on this item, if you would please use the raise hand function now.
Okay, thank you. Let's move on to discussion. Do you want?
So, just to clarify my statement is, we've been discussing leniency for 2 years. And my observation as I drive through the community, I see more people using battery-operated blowers. I see more homeowners using electric blowers. So in other words, they're stringing up a power cord and they're using that versus, buying something different. My concern initially, when we started this ordinance, is I wanted to start with commercial and bring residential along so there was a bigger learning curve. This council at that time said, no, we're gonna bring everyone along at one time, and that's what we did. To me, if you want to affect change, you gotta remove gray. And the gray is the leniency that we have to offenders. And I just think that we've spent 2 years doing this. Now, and it's time that, one, we hold gardeners, not necessarily landscapers. Although I do own chainsaws, but I do not use chainsaws in the city of Ojai. I don't do a lot of, most of my work is out of Ojai. But the interesting thing is, the thing that I want to say here is we've bent over backwards. And my observation also is that a lot of gardeners that aren't using these blowers and aren't using this new equipment are being allowed to do so by the owners that they work for or the commercial properties that they work for. And I just think it's time that we up the ante and we let the public and we let the community know that this is for all of us, not a specific segment, but for all of us. And if we all strive and work together, we are going to have some fruitful and positive impacts in the community. So if you wanted to be lenient, you might think of leniency in the finding process. But I think we're ready for step 2, and that's everyone get on board and let's get this done.
Bill?
Yes, I'm more or less leaning towards Councilperson Haney's viewpoint on this. I have no problems with warnings. But after a warning, if someone does it again, I think a citation is perfectly in order. And I don't think it needs to be refunded because they've already had a warning,
When you're done, I want to ask you and
Are you-
city manager a question.
Okay, and then I'll finish my thought, okay, and then I'll back off, And I'm a strong proponent of option 1 because it simplifies enforcement. You're not out there measuring the bar, measuring the tree, and any use of a gas chainsaw is a burden on the community in terms of noise and air pollution, and you should have to pay a permit fee for that imposition of that burden of any size. So I like option 1.
Okay. Ryan, are you good? Okay, Souza?
So Randy, I trust you're probably more familiar with what's going on in the community with leaf blowers and all. Hopefully, there aren't that many leaf blowers left, but I guess what I was thinking is, say they hire a new kid, and he doesn't know any better, somehow the company that hired him, or the owner, he's out there with a gas-powered leaf blower. He's the one that I don't want to have an immediate fine, that, you know, the new kid. I would like the company to be held responsible for not giving him the proper equipment, or however that works. You know, when I look at this list of tools, you know, in my mind, why don't we just let things go more wild? Why has it come to this anyway? Because in the direction we're headed, we need to have, you know, what they're blowing is topsoil. What we need to be encouraging is enriching the soil, not getting rid of, you know, there is a time and place to get rid of debris. But I'm going to read this quote, if there's time, a little when we're all done discussing. But let me refocus. Yes, I don't want some young person to suddenly have a fine that's very, very burdensome for them. That's all. So if code enforcement has discretion, and you know, speak to them about this, as long as they have discretion, I'm comfortable with this.
And I would just agree with my council members, it's time to up the ante, and we've had talking about it for a long time, so, and it is a burden on the whole community, so.
I had another question. So I'm trying to think through Souza's question regarding the leniency side of it. Does the code enforcement officer carry around a data bank with him? So when he pulls over someone for a violation, can he look it up immediately and say, you're a violator, or you're a previous violator, therefore I need to write you a ticket? Or how does that work?
Yeah, we don't have that right now, but what we would have, like the way it's worked right now, is we do have a database where we track everybody who's gotten a citation. So if we issued it, we could have the person come in, and if they can show that it's their first time, we can waive it at that point. So that would be, that would probably be the easiest. I think what I'm hearing, and I think one way we can do it where it's relatively simple and easy direction for the staff would be the first time somebody gets caught, if their name doesn't show up anywhere, you have the ability to you know, give a warning. If they get caught a second time, you know, and their name pops up again, it's a citation. I think that's what we would do.
So the other aspect of it is the gardener is at my house and is in violation, and we write him for that. How do we write the homeowner at that point in time?
Mm-hmm. And that's something we haven't done yet. This ordinance gives us the ability to do it, and so we would prepare to start doing that. Once the ordinance is adopted, we will bring an item that will talk about creating the permit process and the fee for the permit and all of that. So we will bring back some of the particulars of how it's done, but the ordinance gives us the ability to do it. We would have to lay out that process.
I know, Mayor, I talk to a lot of gardeners who come to visit to like Aquaflow and or Ojai lumber, but so I'm engaged with a lot of these gentlemen. And what was interesting is when we started with this, a lot of them didn't have the sense to say, this is a cost that the city is asking me to incur, which is buy new equipment. And I kept telling these guys to figure out what that cost is and divide it by your hourly rate and add a percentage in and get a cost recovery. Mm-hmm. And then, so I said that, and then the other thing that we pushed for was having a line of equipment here that they could borrow if it broke down. And the other one was we talked to Eileen Fay at Aquaflow, and we asked her to do the same, which she has. So again, this is 2 years in the making. I think as a community, we've really done as much as we can to help gardeners in this community to have success and to be sustainable. And I just think we're ready for step 2.
Well, sounds like we're ready for a motion. Bill?
I'd like to go ahead and move introduction of the ordinance to revise the city's gas-powered landscape equipment ordinance using option 1 with direction for due discretion for warnings on first offenders.
Okay.
A second.
Okay, roll call, please, Gail.
Councilmember Francina,
Yes.
Councilmember Blatz,
Yeah.
Mayor Pro Tem Haney,
Yes.
Councilmember Wyrick,
Yes.
Mayor Sticks.
Yes. Thank you, Gail. All right, let's move on to item number 4, the 2022-23 budget workshop, the proposed capital improvement program and Measure C budget.
Thank you, Mayor. We're going to pull up, we don't have actually many presentations today, but this is one. So we will pull this up quickly. The presentation is fairly high level, so I realize there'll probably be some detailed questions, but we'll start with the kind of the high level overview here. And so this is our third budget workshop of the year. This is our capital improvement projects, including vehicles and equipment, and our Measure C budget workshop. And so to start, we kind of wanted to start with just big picture overview of the budget. Although most of what we're going to talk about tonight is not general fund, we wanted to just start with kind of a reminder of where we are with our general fund. And so going back to the first budget workshop, we had presented that our proposed, our expected revenue for the next fiscal year would be at approximately $13.1 million. Our expenditures were also approximately $13.1 million. And we were fairly balanced with a slight deficit of $40,000, but we've been able to work on that, and we'll be coming back at the next council meeting with that fully balanced out. And so just from a budget perspective, we have essentially a balanced budget expected this year. And the other factor that stems from that general fund budget is that we reported that the hotel tax, the TOT tax, is at a record high level. And why that's relevant to tonight is that means that Measure C is at a record high level to fund a lot of these projects. And it also means we're able to do some of the transfer of the hotel tax to these projects as well. So we have a balanced budget and a good amount of revenue towards these projects. So that just kind of sets the stage for looking forward to next year. And so we wanted to start with just a simple overview. As a reminder, these capital improvement projects that are shown are made up of mostly 4 funding sources. One is the Measure C 5% hotel tax increase, which is expected to be about $2.5 million each year, and during what we call regular years at this point is what that's what the average amount looks to be. The second funding source is the TOT transfer, which we included in the budget this year at a 10% level. The third funding source is grants, which are make up a large portion this year, a larger portion than normal, because of the bulk of a couple big grant projects like the ATP and the Stewart Canyon projects moving forward. And then the fourth source are kind of miscellaneous taxes. The big one is the gas tax, but there's a few others that also can be used towards things like paving. So the bulk of these projects come from these 4 sources. In our past, before Measure C existed, we didn't have that 4th source. So the other 3 sources made up a much smaller budget. So our CIP budget was much smaller, and we were able to do fewer projects than we're able to do, than we're expecting to be doing moving forward. As I mentioned, that second item on the list, the TOT transfer, that is included in the budget this year at a 10% level, which is $462,000 being transferred towards capital improvement projects. We recommended continuing it this year because of the focus on street paving, and that's going to be the extra little chunk of money we need to be able to do the street paving that we had promised to do. So. So with all those 4 funding sources, the total budget of the capital improvement project program this year is expected to total about $10 million, which is a huge budget for us for capital improvement projects. We had looked back in the past and years, so there were years where, the budget was $2 million, $3 million. And so we wanted to start explaining this because it really speaks to the idea that we said this year was going to be the first year, now that Measure C is coming in regularly, where we're going to be able to actually catch up on deferred maintenance. And we're actually going to budget adequate funds to be able to start catching up on deferred maintenance. So this year is a $10 million budget. A big chunk of that is the ATP grant, about $4 million. But even without that, the $6 million budget remaining is a much larger budget than we've had in the past for these types of projects. And so, as I mentioned, I know we can get really into the detail on this. I'm going to try to start with a fairly high level. We have a few categories that we've identified how much funding is going towards those key categories this year, just as kind of a high level overview. The first that we talked about recently was street paving, and that will account for about $1.8 million of the $10 million capital improvement project budget this year. And that was the paving plan that was recently approved by the city council a couple months back. Second, the ATP, which is mostly grant funds, are actually for next year, it's all grant funds, but that is $4.1 million. We also have $1.1 million in climate mitigation projects. Those projects include the Middle Stewart Canyon habitat restoration, the solar panel installation at City Hall, and then starting to work on solar panel installation at the Public Works Yard. We have identified starting to move to the electrification of our city facilities as another project. We have we talked last year about we had received a grant for an electric trolley, and then we were also planning to get an electric truck. The challenge was that, as I think a lot of people know, that there's waiting lists for these things now because gas prices are going up. And so we actually are on the waiting list, for example, for the first electric truck at this point. But we've been told that that waiting list is about 12 months. So we do think it'll be next, like in this fiscal year coming up, we'll get it. But those had been in last year's budget, and I think we're going to get them this year. So it'll be the start of moving to the electric trucks and electric trolleys. We have budget included for, our funding included for 2 more electric vehicle charging stations, with the plan that those would come back to the city council to identify the best location in the next couple of months. We have plans for an electric charging station for bicycles, and also to start replacing our electric landscaping equipment. And so that makes up the $1.1 million in climate mitigation projects for the city. We have $100,000 for tree maintenance and fire mitigation. We have $1.2 million for parks, which includes the Libby Park remodel of the restrooms, the Libby Park sewer line pump system, which is in process, the Libby Park pergola timber replacement, some improvements to the Boyd Center, to the roof and the gym floor. And then I think the biggest chunk and the chunk we're excited about is the improvements to Sarasota Park, including the outdoor multi-sport court that we've talked about recently at council, but also the new playground and the moving of the trash enclosure at Sarasota Park, plus the renovation of the ball fields. So besides the ATP, which is grant funded, you can see that paving, climate mitigation, and parks, we tried to make sure that we have kind of a similar level of funding for those 3 areas as priorities. Then we kind of have from there kind of the next level of priority, which is 3 sections: complete streets improvements. These are improvements outside of the ATP, so the ATP kind of stands on its own. But the complete streets improvements include the Grand Avenue bike lanes, the some ADA improvements at the facilities, are at city facilities, the bike trail bridge at the Fox Canyon Barranca, a speed survey, sidewalk fixes and trip hazard reductions. And so that is $220,000 in funding towards those complete streets and infrastructure improvements. We also have several parking lots that we're planning to pave this year, along with our paving plan. So we're including the Rainbow Bridge parking lot, the Lower Libby parking lot, the plaza, the police department, the park and ride, and then finishing the public works. Oh, I'm sorry, I was thinking Lower Libby. The public works lower parking lot is also included. And so that's $141,000 budgeted towards starting to maintain the parking lots, which have been deferred for quite a few years. And then another area that we're planning to do work, a lot of deferred maintenance work, is on our city facilities. We have $440,000 towards those city facilities, which include a big chunk that we've identified towards the City Hall campus, which would include catching up on the deferred maintenance on the buildings, the Kent Hall building and the Oak Tree House building, but also to start doing some work, some improvements to the campus grounds themselves. We also have the gazebo and garden entry roof planned this year. The sewer repair at Little House, which we've identified as a more urgent need than we had anticipated. We've had some issues related to that, so we're going to prioritize that one. And then we have some improvements at the museum, the chapel roof and the HVAC system at the museum. So I think when we had the museum speak earlier a couple weeks ago, they had talked about some improvements they needed. Those are included in the capital improvement project budget as well. And then we have the paint and the re-roofing of the arcade as well, which is another item that's been due. So those are like the big areas that we're focusing on. Like I was saying, paving, climate mitigation, parks, and then taking care of our facilities, parking lots, and streets. Those are really the focuses this year as part of the CIP. We also have some funds allocated from the drainage fund to start doing some work on our drainage improvements. We have the trolley stop that Councilmember Francina mentioned. That is budgeted for this year. That one item was budgeted last year, but the idea was to design it from scratch, and which ended up not happening. And so this year we're going to move towards, we have a design for similar trolley stops, and we're just going to move forward with one of those designs. So that is anticipated to be included this year. And then, as I mentioned, but because they're listed separately on the vehicle replacement plan, we are planning to have the electric trolley, electric truck, which we're on the waiting lists for. And then one of our ideas was to start getting some newer trailers that we could hook up to the electric vehicles, because we aren't going to go with the heavier duty, bigger gas vehicles anymore. So we have the start of getting some of those trailers to start moving over to that electric fleet. So lastly, then I'll take questions. We also have our equipment and IT replacement fund. I think the biggest thing on the vehicle equipment, our replacement, and the equipment and IT replacement funds is that we're finally starting to invest in those again. I think when we have tough years, it's always easy to cut the funding to those items and say we're not going to buy new computers or new vehicles for a couple years, which is what we did during COVID. But this year we've made sure to include funding to start catching up on those things. And so we have some cybersecurity improvements. We have the installation of the new server room in our building here at the campus, and some improvements related to that server room. We have new computers after we haven't updated anybody's computers for several years. And then a big one for the staff is the new hardware and software programs, for programs that can do better reporting, more accurate reporting, and more timely reporting of the finance system, public records requests, and the planning. The Excella is the program for our planning department. So I think I mentioned most of the others, but I think the main thing was just that we are planning to fully fund those funds for the first time in a few years and start catching up on all the work that we had deferred when times were tough. So with that, the total of all funds that are included in the capital improvement projects are about $10 million. Like I said, a big chunk of it is grants, but another big chunk, about $3.5 million, is Measure C funds, which was money that we just didn't have up until the adoption of Measure C. So we're going to start seeing the benefits of that this year and moving forward into the future. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, James. That's some list. Impressive. Questions, Randy?
I just wanted to clarify, James, in the initial, 1, 2, 3, 4, the fifth paragraph, or the second paragraph on page 2 of 5, you start out with the initial estimates for Measure C were that the city would anticipate. So as you go through the numbers, the city trends suggest that the city will collect about 4.2 million over fiscal year ending 21-22, correct? And then below it, it says the city projects an additional 2.5 million. So am I reading that into 4.2 plus 2.5, coming out to revenues for Measure C closer to 7 million, or is the 2.5 part of the 4.2?
Yeah, and it's funny. We rewrote that a few times trying to make it clear, and I knew it was confusing still. But so what we were trying to say, and it's kind of I think it's a good news thing, but what we were trying to say is that the city ended up collecting $4.2 million over the first 2 years that it was adopted, that the Measure C was adopted, and which is the year ending next month. So up until next month, we've collected 4.2 million total in Measure C. Okay. And then we're anticipating next year collecting 2.5. And so it's like good news, bad news. The good news is that because hotels, that's strange calling it good news, but when COVID impacted everything and the hotels shut down, we kind of stopped spending the money because we didn't know when it was going to recover. Right. But the good news is it recovered fairly quickly, and so we weren't spending it. So we have kind of a pot of money sitting there, which is going to fund all of this work that we wouldn't have had money for. So,
well, it's interesting. In the past, we've had quite a few people in the community say raise taxes, and it just took us forever to figure it out. But this Measure C was probably one of the best things that we had done for the community. My next question is, Mayor, if I can, every time I go into this CIP environment, I just think of capital improvement, meaning something separate from everyday maintenance.
Yep.
So as I'm going through these line items, I'm just trying to identify things that, the multi-sports basketball futsal courts. That's not a normal thing. That's above and beyond. That seems to me like something intended for CIP. Whereas if I look at the sewer line repair, or the pergola timber repair, or the gym roof repair, or refurbishing of the gym floor, or, it seems like that's just standard maintenance operations. So my question to you is, how much money do you allocate to the Public Works Department for basic maintenance on community facilities? Is that, and if you don't, you don't. I'm not trying to put you on the spot. I'm just wondering how we go about doing that if we wanted to re-identify a CIP from standard basic maintenance that must be performed, not the way it's performed right now. And then the other thing is, it seems to me that we need to go to the Rec and Parks Department for approval, and I'm lost on why we need their approval to do something that's as basic as refurbish a floor, which should be done on an annual basis. You see what I'm trying to say is,
Yep.
There's things that just need to be done, and there's things that are above and beyond the call of done.
Yeah. No, and that's true. We went through this year looking for those looking for the clear ones. You know, things like, I could tell you the one that had bugged me for years was the fact that it was included in the CIP was the drafting of the community forest management plan, which we've identified as a priority, but how is that a capital improvement project? And that was on the list for years. So we went through it this year and we really tried to take out the obvious stuff. There's some things in here, to your point, you know, maintaining the roof or the gym floor at Boyd Center that should have been regular maintenance. The challenge is, or the reason why they show up is when they aren't done regularly and now you have to replace your whole roof and it's $65,000, it isn't regular maintenance anymore.
So my thought back on that is and I think that's okay to look at it that way, but it's a big but.
Yeah.
If our public works, who's accountable for all of these public facilities,
Yeah.
is working in conjunction with the Rec and Parks Director, for instance, and they're actually doing walkthroughs and they're identifying projects that need to be done, we shouldn't all of a sudden get caught with not knowing that our roof needs to be repaired.
Agreed, yeah.
That's all I'm trying to say is, so if it's a standard maintenance procedure that on an annual basis we inspect our facilities and we create work orders, which could be, the services could be paid through by allocating 500, like I added up here. You've got roughly $500,000 in additional services that you're going to CIP for. So what if we allocated Public Works $500,000 additional a year in their budget that they had to do basic maintenance on facilities out of? Is that a better way? That way our hands aren't tied having to go through this allocation process versus we see it, we know it needs to get done, let's get it done.
Yeah. Yeah, and that is what we're moving towards. I was trying to remember what day we took the general fund budget, because the reason it doesn't show up here is because it's in the general fund. And we're bringing it back next meeting, so I'll be able to, I can get into it in some detail there since the website's not pulling up. But the
IT upgrade.
that was one of the things we included, faster web internet. But in the budget this year, we actually had this discussion when we talked about the general fund. The maintenance budget hadn't changed for 5 years. It was the same dollar amount every year for 5 years. And the reality was, what we all realized was, everybody just said, you know, kind of, here's what we normally do, and, you know, we're just going to keep doing what we normally do. So when we brought the budget this year, we talked about this with the city council, and we talked about, we need to really actually be thoughtful about our maintenance budget and increase the maintenance budgets, because the cost of everything's going up. And, you know, we had included in the budget having 2 more maintenance workers. And one of the conversations we had is, if we have 2 more workers, we need the money to give them the tools or the equipment or the materials they need to work. And so in the budget this year, in the general fund, we actually did increase all maintenance budgets. I was trying to find it so I could say exactly how much, but we increased them. I want to say it was like 50% increases, with the idea being exactly what you're saying, is start doing this stuff as regular maintenance and not let it get to the point where you have to do the full roof repair, or, you know, the full gym floor repair. And so that is the goal. I think the problem is, it comes back to the deferred maintenance, the years and years of deferred maintenance, is some of this stuff does almost have to get, you know, torn down or torn out, and a whole new one's got to get put in. So that is what we're working towards. When we bring the budget back at the next meeting, I'll highlight those maintenance funds and show how much they've increased from the 5 years prior. So.
I'll wait. I'll ask. I have a couple other things to add when we get into the discussion.
Okay. Do you have a question?
I have 4 quick questions.
Okay. 4. Wow, okay, go.
I have 4 quick questions, and then not comments. We'll get to comments
A
later.
lightning round.
Okay, so I'll just go through them real quick, okay? Can the electric vehicle charge stations include some component for capital cost recovery in addition to covering energy costs?
Interesting. I think so. So typically, we can recover our costs So we should be able to build those into the cost.
I'm just saying that would help us do more charging stations. That's a question.
Yeah,
Can
We
be
can
done.
fully recover the cost of a thing in selling the thing. So yeah, we can recover the cost.
Yeah.
Through
Can I quote
the-
you on that? We
Fully
on
recover the
thing,
thing.
yeah.
Yeah, we can recover under Prop 26, and we can recover the
It
costs.
would help us do more.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Which I think it's funny, James Hahn and I were talking about this recently. We were saying that 4 years ago, we all were like, well, if electric vehicles catch on.
No,
you
they're
know,
here.
and the reality is they're here. So I think you're right that
So
we're
anyway,
gonna,
that might be a way of
that.
upping the ante a little bit. But that's a comment. Let me get to the questions first.
And one further thing on that before
Okay.
you move off the electric vehicle charging pieces of it. There's 3 costs there that can be recovered. One is the capital cost of putting it in place. 2 is the energy. 3 is the cost of the provider to provide that service, the
Right.
credit card fees, et cetera.
Right.
And all 3 of those can be recovered by the city.
Good. Okay. Question 2. I noticed we had PEG funds for council chamber upgrades.
Yep.
Can that include converting our obsolescent fluorescent to LED finally?
Oh, we've been talking about that for years.
I know for years. You and I were supposed to come up with a recommendation. We never did it.
What
Yeah.
happened?
That was one I was
The idea
hop- I
of
was
video
hoping that had
quality, you know,
fizzled out.
it improves the video quality for communication, public communication.
Yeah, I believe we looked at that and we had said it, that our argument would be that it's the lighting for the videos, so that we would argue that it could be
Just
funded
add-
from
that's
PEG.
my
Well, I
question.
remember.
And I would
Yeah.
concur with that on the legal side. The PEG funds can be used for anything that generates and provides the video feed to the cable television system, which includes the lights for
Right.
the cameras.
With about a 30 to 40% energy savings.
Yep.
Okay. And then question 3, is the paving for the police department inside the security fence?
It's the whole lot, right? Both inside and
That
outside.
includes the non-public access areas?
Yeah, it includes that
Okay,
as well.
that's my question.
Yeah, and the chief and I, we
Okay.
walked it 2 weeks ago and it's in worse shape than I thought.
I understand, that's just my question, we'll get to comments later. And then what's involved in the MS4 permit requirement, 80 grand?
I believe MS4,
MS4 permit requirement, what's involved with that?
I believe that's the one that we are partnering with the county on, if I remember right.
Is that 80,000 of taxpayer,
That's-
or we get some
Yeah, and I think,
reimbursement on any of that?
oh, that's a good question. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if we get reimbursed. I can find out. I think what's involved is, we're I think that's the one that we are, the county is partnering with all the cities and each city contributes and then we're all doing the MS4 together because it's much cheaper and.
So that's the
more-
city contribution to
So
the
that's the
overall
city
MS4.
contribution, yeah.
And that's the stormwater
Yes,
permit?
yes.
Okay, thank you.
So, and I can find out the funding source. I believe we get funding like specifically for those projects. So.
That's all.
That was a speed round. Okay, let's move on to public comments.
That's true.
Oh, I can leave
That's
now.
true.
Okay, yes. Bill Miley?
Yeah.
Bill, I will hear you on video.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. Good evening, Bill Miley. I have about 9 quick items to say about the capital improvement program, which is all good. 1, and this is kind of funny. In the administrative memo, and I think in the 3rd or 4th paragraph, it talks about the general fund projected revenue will be like 12.7 million and estimated to increase in the 22-23 year to 134 million. There was
I
a
think there's a
decimal
decimal
point.
missing.
There was a decimal point
Decimal.
missing, but I like that revenue.
Yeah.
And we're going to have a tax reduction, right? Okay.
Duly
James,
noted.
you are really good. And Pam, okay.
Yee-hoo.
Item 2, getting the poor roads upgraded, wow, is that good? Item 3, which is especially working with the residents on Drown Street, so that they get what they need and they don't get what they don't want. Like he does, it shows the willingness of the city to work with and to get it done this year. Item 4 is, I don't understand under page 7 out of 8, it says other income donations, $429,500. That's really big. And where do we get that from? Page 7 of 8. Under revenue.
I'll take a look at that. Yeah, that one.
Okay, good.
I'll
all right.
respond right now.
Number 5 is, I like the capital improvement allocation for the museum's roof as separate from giving them the money so they can spend it. I like that. Because they do really see the museum as an institutional facility that supports the city in its foundation, okay? Item 6 is, I think it's important for the public to know that electric trolley vehicles are not cheap, and that getting one for probably $500,000 probably is a good deal. I just quickly looked it up over there. Because it says if you convert a diesel or natural gas, I guess, to electric, it's still going to cost you $500,000 maybe to do that. So I think that's really important for the public to know. And maybe Robin can somehow build that into a press release.
Yeah.
Number 7 is I like charging stations, the option of putting charging stations at other parking lots. And somewhere in there was charging stations for bicycles, which I certainly like, and that's really good. Number 8, let's see, number 9, where's number 9? Okay, so, oh, number 8. It doesn't seem like in cybersecurity on page 4 out of 18 that the 3 or 4 items there are enough. It comes up to about $32,000. And it seems to me that with all the hacking and other kinds of ransom efforts, is that enough money? Apparently it is. Maybe we have really good cybersecurity now. But over the next few years, we're only putting like 40 grand into that each year. And I'm wondering if that's enough, especially when hiring a firm that comes in and looks at what we have and tests it out to see that it works for everything new that hackers are doing. Okay. And the last thing would be, this is something that's not there, but it's a capital improvement. It has to do with seating, benches. To provide benches, seating benches for seniors and others around town, like VMU, so that we can promote and support people who walk about. You know, and I'm going like this. So I'm proposing that we have a group of seniors, including me, and you let them loose, and they walk until they get tired, and then you mark it, and that's where the bench is. And then after that, you mark it with the bench. And in addition to the city paying for that, you offer people the opportunity to sponsor a bench. And I ought to be in the first in the line, because I want one for my wife, Cookie, and I would right now give you the money and to do it. It would be wonderful to have people in this community with a place where they can honor their family or whoever, because you can't put any trees in Libby Park anymore because there's too many of them.
Time.
Thank you. Thank you, Bill. Cookie's Bench. Thank you.
I love it.
Any public comments on Zoom, Gail?
If there's anyone in the Zoom queue who would like to speak on this item, please use the raise hand function now.
Can I briefly respond to a couple? Just they were good points. The donation category. Just the question was, the comment was that it was a large donation, so there was a question about that. The bulk of that is a civic association donation related to the multi-sport courts this year. So, to the multi-sport courts this year.
Civic Association.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that they're always a great partner. Cybersecurity. It's a very good comment saying that the $40,000 over the next couple of years isn't much in the scheme of things. We're budgeting for a cybersecurity assessment. And so that's to get started assessing where the weaknesses are. So what we expect is that coming out of that assessment, there's going to be certain items and needs identified that we're going to have to then bring back and budget for. So that's kind of just to wrap our hands around what we need to fix. And then I did, going through the CIP, I forgot to mention, Mr. Miley mentioned Drown Avenue. And so I know that that one will more likely be questions, but what we had noted, and I'll just briefly go through that quickly, but I've talked to about a dozen people over the last couple years about Drown. I think probably each council member's probably talked to the same or more people in the last couple years. And one of the challenges to me, you know, everybody can tell me if they disagree, but every person I talk to has a different idea of what is needed to fix Drown. I need a speed bump, or I need sidewalk, or I need, and you know, then, and the other person doesn't want what the other person wants. So the conclusion, or you know, we were thinking about it, and what we ended up recommending, and we included it because right now there's Drown Avenue's included in our paving plan, which even that I've heard people say we need our street paved, and I've had other people say if you pave our street, people are just going to speed more. So there's right now, it just doesn't feel like there's a meeting of the minds. So what we recommended in this report was that over the next year, we get direction from council to work to have some community meetings out, you know, at maybe at the park or, you know, somewhere in the neighborhood. And we get feedback from the community and bring that feedback back on what repair people, you know, the consensus is that what everybody actually wants done on Drown. And so right now there's $130,000 included in paving towards Drown. We can include that, we could get the bid, but then come back and decide if that's what needs to be done or if it needs to be something else. So
Thank
so
you,
that's
James.
what's proposed, yeah.
Okay, we'll move on to discussion.
I volunteer Randy to be the Drown Avenue neighborhood mediator.
Well, actually, I
Well,
was just going to touch
wanna
on that,
go? Okay.
but the mayor and I have talked, Susan's talked, but it's interesting. I was meeting with, I had one group meeting maybe a year and a half ago about the bumps at my house. That was a good meeting. And then the gentleman who initiated it moved out. And then we ended up refunding the hump money back to the back to the
Right.
Drown members. And then there was lost in translation, what we were going to do next, when we were going to do it. So 2 weeks ago, I met with another group, the De Silvas, and we met. They actually had an engineer in the group. There were 5 of us meeting. And one of the suggestions, which I thought was very interesting, is they want a walking lane, a bike lane, and 2 vehicle transportation lanes. And they thought maybe shutting down one side of the street for no parking to do that.
Heard that too.
So my feedback to them was, because there was an engineer in the group who has access to a lot of graphics, I said, well, draw us up something. And then why don't you 5 go out and present it to your community, and then we'll meet again and we'll discuss it. You know, but it goes back to what Bill said. These 5 have specific needs, and this person has one. In fact, I had one person who said, don't do anything because we're waiting to hear from another person. So I didn't meet with anybody, and then that group said, why weren't you meeting with us? And I said, because someone on the street said, don't meet with you. So there's a lot of confusion. I think an ad hoc committee, 2 council members, and actually go there and focus on what that street needs and try and come to some consensus on how to do it. Like you said, some want sidewalks, some want curbs. Some don't want a hedge removed, and some don't want a fence removed. There's a lot of things going on there, and we've created some of this confusion with some of the way we've treated the public right away. So it'll be an interesting conversation, but I agree with you. I think the best use of funding would be to actually get an engineer, get it along with that ad hoc committee, and actually study it and present it and to that area, to those groups, upper, lower, middle, and then come back to council with that. So that's one thought, and I'm glad you did that, James.
Thank you.
I had I wanted to bring this up because I
Is
heard.
that a different, I'm sorry.
Bring it back to the chair.
Oh,
Yep.
Chair.
I had another comment, and then I'll turn it over
Oh, I
to.
just wanted to, okay.
And
I'm
you
trying to
can
remember my
speak.
thought.
You can speak on that. Susie, if you want to speak on Drown, go ahead.
Oh,
Because it's
well,
on the tip.
Can you bring it back to the chair, y'all?
okay.
Do you want to?
Yeah,
Okay, go ahead.
But before I forget, I'm already forgetting what I was going to say. If nobody else wants to be on that ad hoc committee, I would be interested. And, because I'm talking to the people already, I would like the mother who is afraid for her children to walk a couple of blocks to be people like that, because to me, the number one thing is safety above somebody's personal preference for a hedge or a fence or a sidewalk, whatever. What's the word? The barometer is whether little children can walk safely to visit a neighbor. And if that is accomplished, then everybody else, there's just, that's the key thing. And can those children ride their bikes safely to Topa School? Those are the measurements, whether it's a safe bicycle pedestrian-friendly neighborhood. That's the goal. So yes, I'd like to be part of that. My other questions can wait, so go ahead.
So, Mayor, while it came up, and I think Mr. Miley said it, something about institutional community resources. And just while he said it, I'm going to bring it up. I'm going to bring it up at the next council meeting, and that's taking the museum and the arts funding and actually taking it out of that public environment of making requests and create a cultural institution of the community. And I'm taking words from you, Bill, I think it was you, but cultural institutions, our museum and our arts are here and they're going to stay here. And there's no reason that they should every year have to request funding. We need to allocate $100,000 to, or whatever the council agrees to, and that they bill out of that $100,000 to maintain their facilities and their operations and to provide the grants that the arts community does. I just think that it's time that we identified them as cultural community institutions that should not have to rely on annual requests for funding. They're here, they're ours, they're here to stay. So that's just a thought on that, and I'll yield the floor.
Bill?
Where are the bike racks? We need bike racks. I mean, just go around town. I don't mean to be.
Bob Daddy.
I don't want to be snippy about it, but we need bike racks. We need them now. We
Everywhere.
don't need to wait another year. We need them.
Yeah, that's
That's
a good point. I was thinking maybe that they're so small an amount that they don't show up on the CIP, but I think we should reflect it. We'll make sure that they're reflected or
we
included.
need bike racks, and we need more than just incidental. We need bike racks.
Yep.
I mean, just look around town and have them stacked up everywhere.
Yep.
And we want to encourage bicycle riding, so we need to encourage parking infrastructure for bike riding.
Yep.
So that's number one. Number two, do we have the trolley stage structure that we need that's missing? in
Yes.
there?
Yes.
Okay, that's here.
That's
Okay.
included in there. Yeah.
And I really like the sponsored bench program.
Yeah.
I think we should really do that. I think that's great. Okay. Couple more comments, Mayor, with your indulgence. Okay. No offense, Chief. I want to talk about the police. Okay, the Sheriff's Department. They're, this has been an issue. We don't charge anything for the use of the city facility, but then we are contributing repairs. And it would seem to be reasonable, given the analysis that we've done on the Sheriff's Department budget, which includes an overhead component, that we ask for a credit on the billing on the overhead charges that we get from the Sheriff's Department for the money that we're putting in to cover the overhead of their facility. At least it's sort of a point of discussion.
Yeah.
We should at least ask about it. Now, I know that we're in the midst of a campaign and so on and so forth, but I think that makes sense. There's an overhead component to the billing. We're fronting some money for overhead. Hey, maybe reduce the billing by the amount that we're supporting, and it's not for general public use. I think it's worthy of a discussion.
Yeah, I think it's worth discussing. We have needed to do the repair for a few years, so we're including it in the budget
Right.
this year, but I don't see why we couldn't ask. I think the current agreement, if I remember correctly, it is like one of the $1 a year leases.
Right.
But it does currently say that the city's responsible for the exterior improvements, if I recall.
That's what I recall. We'll confirm if there's not a special provision regarding paving. But even if
But
it
the
says
point
that,
I'm trying
we
to
could
make is
still
that
ask
lease
for the
is
credit.
obsolete along
Right,
with the
right.
contract agreement. They're both obsolete, expired.
Yeah, and whereas
And why couldn't there be an understanding that when we're contributing overhead for the facility, that they do a commensurate reduction in overhead
Yep.
on our billing?
yeah, and that's where I was going is, you know, if the sheriff's department, which is not a decision made by myself or the chief, you know,
Right.
just to be clear, but if the sheriff's, you know, command staff says that they're gonna follow the terms of the lease, that would
Lease is-
be a
is-
challenge. But for me, I think it's worth us asking for credit on it. You know, we had talked to the sheriffs about, you know, if we could get creative to find some win-win
Well,
situations.
this is not a, I mean, this is where basically we say we're happy to do it for you. If you approve, then.
Roll it into our paving plan, yeah,
you know,
exactly.
Anyway, just a thought.
No, that's a good point.
And the third, I've already pointed out, I think, yeah, we need to get these fluorescents changed. I really like the idea of a capital recovery in the charging stations, so we can do more of them, because all of our parking lots need charging stations. The faster we can do that, the better.
Yeah.
And then the last thing I want to ask, and Councilman Haney brought this up at a previous meeting, and he alluded to it already. Right-of-way recovery when we're doing our overlay program. What's our approach going to be when we run into an obstacle, which is a private property owner's encroachment on the public right-of-way that's causing a problem for our overlay program? What's our approach to that situation? I don't know what our current protocol is for that.
No, and I don't know that we have, you know, that we have an official adopted one. I'm sure in the past it's kind of just been
We're
handled.
doing Kayama, and that's
by
going to be an
best
issue.
practices,
Is
so-
that going to get in the way of the paving machines?
Yeah,
And what are we going to do about it?
yeah. So that's something we can bring back. So we have to bring the bids back to council at one of the next two meetings. So we can include in that conversation what that process can be, you know, and let the council choose how aggressive we are with
It's
that.
going to only become an increasing issue, because it is private use of public land, private benefit from public land.
Yeah.
That's all I have for now.
Um,
I never really got my turn.
Okay. Go ahead, Souza.
Okay, so James, I was happy to hear you say a lot of things, but.
I think there's some good stuff.
Oh,
in
yeah,
there.
no, it's great. On item E, you said electric bike charging station, $10,000, and that it would come back to as to where, this is one station? And-
Yes.
And it's gonna come back for council direction as to where it should be located?
Yeah, and so just like my quick explanation of that, the electric vehicle charging stations we have good experience with. We've done a couple. We know how it works. We're going to come back to council and get consensus on which parking lots we want to go next, or if we want to do more in the same parking lots, you know, like maybe the park and ride. But the electric bike charging station is not something we've done.
Yes.
It's a new thing. So last year, the council had said, let's start thinking about it. So we've included the money this year, so it's going to be coming up. It's funny, we were talking about this. I have an electric bike, and mine plugs into a normal wall outlet.
Yeah, I thought all of them did.
And so the
does
old
mine.
answer from the staff that had looked at this a year plus back was every charger is different, so we can't do it.
That's fine.
And I've
Oh,
told,
it's-
so I've told, when we talked with James Hahn and some other people who are leads on these projects, we were talking about, I think it's just wall outlets near the
Yeah.
bike trail, you know?
Yeah,
So
but-
that's what we're planning to propose. so.
Okay, so that will come back, because I have a lot of thoughts on that.
Yeah.
I mean, there's probably some restaurant that would love to have one, because nobody wants to sit for an hour, well, maybe some people do. But if I were riding my bike from Ventura to Ojai, I wouldn't want to leave it charging by itself while I go get something cold to drink,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
So I think it needs to be in some visible location.
Yeah, so we can
Yeah.
bring that back with the vehicle charging stations, and we can identify the sites for each of those
Yeah.
at the same time.
And then, same with I'm, over the years, there've been so many bike parking plans.
Mm-hmm.
So I would like to either have some members from the Complete Streets Committee that ride their bikes for transportation and really know where they're lacking. And then we could put Bob Daddy on some kind of subcommittee or, so that it gets done in the right place. That's my suggestion.
Yeah, I
And I'm
think
always happy to help with that.
we had created a map of bike rack locations, and we had talked about, I think what I could do is I could fold all that in together and come back and we can identify the charging stations, the vehicle, the bike charging, and then talk about where we want to put bike racks. So we can try to do that in one item. So.
Yeah. We could even include some more benches too. Yeah, because
People
unlike
parking.
Bill, I don't think we need to take a walk. We just they need to go everywhere where there's space. Wherever there's space, because there's always some mother with a dog and 2 kids and a bag of groceries, and that way they can enjoy the journey instead of always living in the future and trying to get home. Because we live in a beautiful, wonderful town. There's always lots happening.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I walk with my lunch every day, and every day I'm trying not to drop it on my way. So it'd be nice to have some places to stop.
Ryan, do you want to say anything?
Thank you, Mayor. I completely agree with Councilmember Wyrick about the bike racks. There are definitely places in town where it is under there just isn't enough. There are a lot of the round singular bike thing that I don't know if people understand what they are, but I've never seen those in a lot of other places, but I also don't ride my bike in a lot of other towns. It's always around here. I know what they are now, and I've seen them where they're jammed up. I've seen, especially the pub in the east end of Ojai in front of Topa, in places where people congregate a lot. There's definitely could be some relief on the weekends. Topa has a really nice bike rack, and it gets filled up all the time, and it's kind of a mess. I've seen people knocking bikes over and other stuff. On the electric bikes, I'm all for as many charging stations we can get. But James, the thing that is true is that they almost all exclusively plug into the wall, but they don't all have the same other end. And most people, like, I don't want to carry the adapter around. It's really heavy and it's really big. So when you see bike charging stations nowadays, they're usually incorporating where you just walk up and you don't have your own charger there. So that's been the problem. I think they're getting more standardized because it's kind of becoming much more ubiquitous, and there's not just a few companies here and there all making them. But we do want to see, we're making sure we do the best. And Susan, to your point, we definitely want a public, but people shouldn't expect to charge their bike without it being locked up. They need to have a locking facility during the charge, so that, because we will never be able to put all of them where they'll be able to be seen. Obviously there'll be somewhere where you can look at them, but if you want to go get a drink somewhere, you have some water, you're going in the shop or something, you're going to have to lock them up. So we have to make sure they're incorporated, probably with bike racks as well. But it's good to see how frequent they are. And let's not forget too, I was looking the other day, and as many electric bikes as I see now, it's still amazing. Ojai is still probably 80-20 regular bikes, because all the bikes from the inn and the other hotels and people riding around. So there's still a lot of those, and there's just more and more and more. And it is a great way to get around town. And people who say there's too much traffic, well, there's always a way to get around on a bike as well. But I do think it wouldn't hurt to have some that are there, and also to try and make sure in some organizational fashion that we're not putting them on Ojai Avenue where people will start riding their bikes more in the arcade. We have to figure out a way to get them to the racks, but not have them going through the arcade, which can be problematic. Yeah. I agree 100% on the lights at City Hall. I can't tell you how many times when I first was on the council that I went home and had a horrible headache. And after a number of hours, and some of our meetings were even longer back then, it was really bothersome. So I met with Steve McClary after one of my first meetings and brought this up to Steve a whole bunch. And he told me that the lighting had already recently been replaced to some better version of whatever is going on. I have no idea. I remember having that conversation. So if we can do something to improve the lighting, I'm 100% for it. What people don't realize is that those lights, they actually pulse fast enough that you can't see them. And after a couple of hours, it really impedes your ability to think. They can give you headaches. There's a lot of problems. He told me they weren't that type of light, but I still don't know. I've always thought they were, so I don't know anymore. But it's very common in places where where you're there for a long time, like convention halls, other places where you don't have a chance to maybe get up and leave all the time. that they're changing out lighting because there's a lot of physiological effects that people are realizing on it. So as we get back in to council chambers, I hope you guys don't have your brains melt from the lights there. As you can see, it's very dark in here. I think the budget looks pretty good. I know this is a very complicated portion of it. The number one thing I hear all the time recently is just, hey, how fast and when are you guys getting back to fixing the roads?
Mm-hmm.
That's the number one, and it's getting worse. I know why we've been behind on the paving plan. I know what's going on. I explain to people. I defend the city. I explain COVID. I do all that. But that's the thing I hear the most. And I have a couple clients who've talked to me on Drown. I have another of other people. I'm with you. There's not a consensus on exactly what to do. I hope we can figure something out. But I know that I've heard, that's another one that it seems like it's focused on Drown for some reason, that Drown is a much worse street. And I don't know. I don't drive on it very often. But when I do notice it has kind of I don't know, it just feels tighter and it's a little more bowed in the center. And I think both of those things are causing people to be a little more uncomfortable. But if we have to figure out, something else creative, it sounds like that's something, though, that all of us are hearing enough about that it might be willing to prioritize, and we have to figure out a way. Other than that, I love all this bike stuff. As we're redoing, so I say this, and I don't want to, I hope it's not as contentious as the Maricopa portion of the ATP. But as we move forward with the improvements on Ojai Avenue, it's probably going to be something that, in concert with that and with some of the repairs it's going to be the good timing to do some of these Ojai Avenue projects and make sure that we're building infrastructure for the next, 25, 30 years. That's why we're laying conduit. We have $100,000 in there for broadband conduit. Whether that's used for broadband or something else down the road, it's worth putting it in the ground while we have a chance. They're doing a ton of work on Ojai Avenue right now. Just like we put conduit in when they're doing work, I think when we are moving into the ATP on Ojai Avenue, we want to make sure that all these things are coordinated to cause the least impact. And it's probably a good time when we're already tearing up a bunch of stuff to get some of these infrastructure things done, because it's going to be tough. Putting in a new bike rack, all that stuff. The electric infrastructure for electric stuff, if that's going to be on Ojai Avenue, it can be disruptive to some of our businesses. And, any weekend is, they only get 52 weekends a year to try and make their living. So let's try and be as workable around that schedule as we possibly can. Other than that, just really great job overall on the budget. You guys are doing a great job. Welcome to the world of trying to get an electric truck. Only a year, James. That's not bad. It is the forecast I was reading on Ford F-150 electric trucks finally, which is something that I know there's a lot of truck drivers in Ojai who would like one, is still like, if you go order one now, it's like 2 years still. It's completely ridiculous.
Yeah.
I'm glad to hear we're moving forward on that, though.
We had, we were trying to get on the list. I wasn't going to say this because this might create a whole Ford versus Chevy debate, which, for guys is a big one. But for, we were trying to get on the Ford F-150 list.
Didn't mention Dodge. So.
Yeah, that's true. Ram, yeah. Ford F-150s, they are not even taking anybody on the wait list anymore. And so we ended up, to try to get our first one in, we ordered, we reserved a Chevy Silverado electric. So we are kind of, taking a side there, so.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Ryan. Great comments from council members. And
One more question.
Yep, and I just want to say, the themes I'm hearing: lights, bikes, and pavement, clearly.
Mm-hmm.
And just a big thanks to James and staff for, this is an incredible list, especially considering what's happened historically in the last couple of years, that we are back on the ball and making things happen. So I applaud that. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Randy, then Susan?
So I had two comments. The first one was on the bill. I caught the same thing. I saw the revenue stream go from 12.7 to 134 million, and I went, God bless Measure C. So I put my comma where it belonged, and then I just wanted to make a comment on that. For years, we received reports of this nature with more than just commas being a problem. you couldn't read them, you couldn't understand them, you couldn't comprehend them, and it wasn't because we're ignorant up here, it was because they were just poorly done. And I would like to thank James and his staff, commend them for being able to keep us fed with all the proper information in the right order, and especially coming out of COVID. We sat in a meeting for 2 days last week with a bunch of water agencies, and they were delegating additional work to staff when we were done. And Bill and I kept turning around and going, well, that's our staff. That one guy there. So it's interesting, the city of Ventura, the other couple water agencies, they have 10 times the staff that we have. And our staff just needs to know that they probably don't hear it enough from us, but we appreciate and we value what they do. And we value, obviously, you for leading them the way you do.
Thank you.
Okay, now let's get back to the nuts and bolts. I didn't, when I brought this up about how to reorganize CIP versus general maintenance that needs to be done, I don't think personally you have time this year to do that, and I wouldn't want you to, but I would think that that somewhere in the next year, you sit down with Public Works and you sit down with Parks and James, and you actually brainstorm this and say, how can we streamline this, make it more efficient, and provide better service in a more timely manner to our community?
Yeah.
And that's what I would ask. I don't expect any changes from what you presented. Just let's think about that down the road.
Thank you. And then I was able to get the page to load, and so I had given an estimate, and what it is for the last 5 years we had been basically budgeting $250,000 a year for maintenance, and this year we had increased it. After it was the same number for 5 years, we increased it to about $410,000. So not everything all at once, but a big increase with that in mind, and that focus of starting to do more as routine maintenance and not having to do the complete remodel and tear out and all that kind of stuff. So.
I also think with the flexibility of Measure C, that you don't necessarily have to throw a specific amount of money into a pot. What you have as a city manager to do on a consent basis is, as you see something, do it. Because there's a tremendous amount of trust in you and staff right now, and I would say run with it.
Thank you.
Yeah. So the city council received another email, this one from a resident named Mia Emhard, Ojai resident for almost 50 years, she put in her letter. And this is another person who was almost hit in the crosswalk. This was, again, in front of Ojai Coffee Roasting Company, and she had looked and didn't see any cars coming as she crossed, but she thinks he came peeling out of South Montgomery. So my question is this. One of our problems is that Ojai Avenue is also a state highway run by Caltrans, and the public needs to, understand what that means. Can we someone suggested that we need raised crosswalks that act as speed bumps with lights in the road, such as they have in Santa Paula. Now, I don't know if Santa Paula has raised crosswalks. I heard about the lights in Santa Paula. But can we have raised crosswalks on Ojai Avenue that act as speed bumps? Is that something that's allowed, or can you investigate? You don't have to answer.
Yeah, we can look into it.
Into that.
We can look into it. The two things that that Caltrans has been supportive of, and to your point, it's Caltrans Street at this point. And so Caltrans has supported the rectangular rapid flashing beacons, RRFBs. I don't remember which order, but the RRFBs, which are the square flashing lights that do give some kind of bump as it's not intended to be a speed bump, but there's some texture to it when you go over it. And so they support the RRFBs, and they support the crosswalks. And then the other thing that they have supported, which we've been careful with, was curb extensions. They promote curb extensions for everything. or for most of those crosswalks. So those are the three in our multiple conversations with Caltrans, because we've talked to them both as part of the ATP, but on other projects as well about doing safety improvements on Ojai Avenue. Those are the three that they typically use. So I haven't heard of this other option, so we'd have to look into that.
Could you ask them, because we, as a council, decided against having all those initially proposed curb extensions.
Right.
So, but
So
the
we've been going
idea
more
of
with
a raised crosswalk, I'm sure there's pros and cons, but in many ways, it's appealing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's better than a death in the crosswalk or another accident in the
Yeah.
crosswalk.
Yeah.
I think it's worth looking into.
Yeah, we've been, so far when we're working with them, we keep pushing towards the rapid flashing beacons, but we'll look into these with them as well.
It doesn't mean we have to do it, but I'd like to know
Yep.
if it's an option, because things are getting busier, and they're, and if we can prevent these are like, whether the canaries in the coal mines right now, these type of encounters.
Yeah.
And there's no question, people have passed me up North Signal, which is unheard of, and on Grand Avenue, even when people are stopped in the crosswalk, some impatient driver, I've seen it, it happened even when the police were there leading the bike train and they caught him. The kids were trying to cross, and so this was a couple of years ago. But, we have to face, there's some more impatient, Ojai needs to be marketed as a slow town. And that is should be a draw, and that we need to create the expectation that when you are here, most especially on residential streets and including Creek Road, all of these streets, slow down, enjoy the scenery,
Yeah.
You know what we could
Ra-
do, Mayor?
Randy?
Thank you. You know what we could do is put boxes of Pixie out, and when we see a speeder coming by, just throw it at them. But
I'd like to, I'd like to.
here's
I think megaphones.
so we have a parking committee that's in place. And so we heard a lot of suggestions tonight about parking. I just would, when I think of bike parking, I think of how we want folks who ride bikes to walk downtown, not ride downtown, because of the narrowness of our streets and the narrowness of our sidewalks. So maybe some joint ventures while the parking committee is thinking of West Ridge on West End and West Ridge on East End, because they have parking areas that we might be able to actually appropriate or negotiate some stalls. But again, if we place them in specific areas where people feel comfortable and safe leaving their bikes, and then we're going to improve or enhance the foot traffic ability in the downtown corridor, hopefully with the ATP, that excites me. Now, park benches, my only concern about more benches, and I like them too, the problem is they encourage people to sleep and to use them for not necessarily the purpose they're intended for. And then the other part of it is the maintenance of them. So I'm not against them, let's think this through
Yes.
so that we don't create an environment where we wish we hadn't.
Yeah.
That's all.
May I
And I think the
respond?
parking committee could do that, Mayor.
Yeah.
Okay. Souza?
Yeah. As to the maintenance, I already suggested to our wonderful city manager, look at the equipment on the Creek Road Park. My mind is blank. What's it called? The park on Creek Road.
Camp Comfort?
Camp Comfort.
Oh, yeah.
They have these indestructible, they appear to be practically as close to indestructible as possible, and low maintenance. They're metal with little holes in them. And if we have people sleeping on these benches, that means we have another problem that we need to
Well,
address. So
that's one
that's no
issue.
reason, wait, it's my turn. Okay. Okay, so that's one thing. But to your point about walking our bike through town, that's not going to happen. Okay? I can tell you that when I'm going from the post office to Westford Market, I'm not going to walk my bike all that way and park it somewhere. I need to put my groceries in my bike cart. I'm going to go down Ojai Avenue, and and if there's no room because there's cars, I'm just going to get in the traffic lane. That's what I'm going to, that's for me. I realize families with little kids can't do that. So that's a whole other topic. And sometimes it is practical to ride our bike,
So-
to walk our bike, but it's not always practical.
I think thank you.
So-
We're about
so-
ready to wrap it up. Can you wrap
Yeah,
it up,
we're
Randy?
wrapping
In a
up.
minute. Well, more importantly is, that it's not a discussion about right or wrong, it's just a discussion about where to.
Yeah.
And my thoughts are, when we're doing bike parking lots, I'm thinking more of the weekend warrior, not the daily warrior. So, I
understand,
recognize that
yeah.
there are people in this community that ride their bikes daily. And, again, I'm not against that, as long as they.
You're gonna be
owe-
one of them. I
As long
know
as
it.
they obey.
All right, let's bring it back to the chair and,
Here's my butt. As long as they obey. Okay.
Okay, so thank you all for a fruitful and interesting discussion, and thank you once again to James and staff for doing all this amazing work and getting us
Alma, yeah.
back, and Alma,
thank
back on
you.
track. So
Thank you,
let's
thank
take a 5-minute break, and we will come back with our last item.
Yeah, I can't wait for that last item.
Susie, you were doing so well tonight.
The bike thing is just crazy. I was.
Yeah, it could be a concentrated.
We're back. Okay, let's move on to item number 5, a discussion of voting districts and ranked choice voting.
And thank you, Madam Mayor, Mayor and Council. I'll give a brief staff report and then questions, public comment, and council comments. No hard action to be taken tonight. If there is support to do something, we'd have to come back at a future meeting. So, brief overview of what we're looking at. The city's current electoral system first, then ranked choice voting, then options and litigation update. So the city's current electoral system was adopted in 2018 to avoid and take advantage of a safe harbor provision under the California Voting Rights Act lawsuit. That's why we, as we all know, perhaps all too well, the district-based system instead of the prior at-large system. The city adopted that in order to avoid what the liability that had extended to the level of millions and millions of dollars for most of the cities that had sought to fight. We took a look at it and we switched to districts. It was implemented for the 2020 election with the first election, Councilman Francina from District 4. And the mayor continues to be elected at large every 2 years. The other 3 seats will be elected this coming election, November 22. Their first district elections, Districts 1, 2, and 3. And it continues successively. The mayor at large every 2 years, as originally approved by the voters and reapproved in 18. And then the 4 council seats split 1, 2, 3, 1 cycle, and 4 the other cycle. And everyone's elected by plurality, which means whoever gets the most votes wins for each of the 5 seats. Ranked choice voting is a different voting system by which the voters rank their candidates for each office in their order of preference, and the ballots are counted in rounds. So if you imagine a case where you had 3 candidates for 1 seat, the voter would mark A1, B2, 3, C, or C first, B second, A third. And then you count up everyone's first choice preferences, and then you take the lowest candidate and say, okay, A got 35%, B got 40%, and C got the balance 25%. C got the least votes. So you take every ballot for whom the first choice was C, and you go to their second choice, and you mark and you distribute the ballots, their ballot out to, in this case, A and B, and you go in successive rounds, each time dropping the lowest number of votes candidate until somebody gets to a plurality if it's a single member seat, or if you have multiple member seats, as is another option, until the relevant threshold has been met, which is often 50% of the number of votes for that seat. So if you had 1,000 voters and 2 seats, each voter would get 2 votes. So it would have to be 1,000 votes for each seat. And the numbers are adjusted to reflect each situation. But the key about it is voters can express multi-layered preferences on one ballot. So they mark, I want A, B, C, I want C, B, A, etc. And then those preferences get expressed through the successive rounds of voting. The process is done publicly. In each individual voter's vote always remains confidential. We have secret ballots in this country. No one will know how anyone voted, but the math to do those rounds is all public. So everyone will understand and if there's issues, can contest it. The process has been implemented in California in 7 charter cities: Oakland, Berkeley, San Francisco, San Leandro, Albany, Eureka, and Palm Desert. And it has been implemented nationwide in a number of cities, mostly larger cities, and in a couple of states. The one that I'm most familiar with is the state of Maine. They have implemented ranked choice voting for their state elections and federal for the Congress and Senate, but not the president. President, of course, is a different election system. And I don't believe any other states have yet adopted ranked choice voting, although I know a number are looking at it. I think it's on the ballot in Nevada this year, and some others are in process. Back to cities in California, only charter cities have an express statutory right to move to a ranked choice voting system. General law cities under Elections Code Section 15450 are required to use a plurality vote system. And no general law city, to my knowledge, has attempted or to shift to a ranked choice voting system. No court has thus ruled that a general law city does not have the power to shift to a ranked choice voting system. However, a general law city that wanted to do so would need to get a court to validate that the voter approval, perhaps, of a ranked choice voting system could override the default state law. The argument would be that the general law city's provision in the state constitution, Article 11, Section 7, which provides that general law cities have the power to make all laws necessary for the general public's welfare and benefit, and are subject and have that power except as to any conflict with general law, that the constitutional power through the voters to adopt a voting system should override the state statutory system. That argument is extant. It has a limited chance of success given existing case law looking at other election situations. General law cities are generally held to follow state elections code. Charter cities have constitutional power through the voter-approved charter to shift to different election systems. There was a bill that was put forward in 2019, SB 212, which was adopted by the legislature to allow general law cities to shift to a ranked choice voting system. It, however, was vetoed by Governor Newsom, and that is not definitive, but also further indication that the existing statutory system does not allow general law cities to switch to ranked choice voting, else a new law would not have had to have been passed. Although because it was vetoed, it's not definitive proof. So it's a bit of an open question or a case of first impression. There's also no case law that has assessed the question of whether a ranked choice voting system can, if implemented with, as in this example, or this city, 4 district seats, all elected ranked choice voting at large, would that override or survive against a challenge from the California Voting Rights Act? The argument is there because the voters' ability to express multi-layered preferences is baked in to a ranked choice voting system, but no one has tested that. The general law cities that all have ranked choice voting, as I understand it, also all have districts and have long had them. So, and I'll confirm that to make sure I'm right on that. But my understanding is, I know, for example, Berkeley, Oakland, San Francisco, San Leandro, the larger ones already had districts anyway, and they've had districts for a significant number of years. So there, too, is an open question. Open question number 1, can a general law city do it? Open question number 2, if so, does that outweigh or override a Voting Rights Act challenge? And then last is an update on the Santa Monica case, which we've all been waiting for. In 2020, the city of Santa Monica got a useful decision from the Court of Appeal that knocked out a trial court victory for the Pico Neighborhood Association, contending that Santa Monica's at-large election system violated the California Voting Rights Act. The Court of Appeal threw that out and said no, because in part it is impossible to draw, or the plaintiffs had not shown that you can draw a majority-minority district, or even a district in which the plaintiffs would be able to achieve a likelihood of success for their racial category, could not be drawn in Santa Monica. There was, they had failed the test and threw out the Voting Rights Act challenge. The Supreme Court granted a petition to review that case in October 2020, and in the course of so doing, depublished the Court of Appeals decision. So it was issued but is not in effect, but has not yet heard oral arguments, and they are accepting late amicus briefs as recently as a couple weeks ago. I have no crystal ball, but reading between the available evidence I do not expect a decision by the Supreme Court in time to affect the November 2022 elections. It seems fairly clear that the court is taking their time in order to give themselves time to think about it and pushing their decision until after anything could be changed for this upcoming election. We are monitoring the case closely and will report if and when they issue a decision. There is no deadline for the Supreme Court to act. They have absolute control over that. The legislature could, of course, do something, and they're not going to, given existing politics in Sacramento. So we wait for the court on that front. So with that, I'll take any questions, and then, of course, public comment, too.
Thank you, Matt. Bill.
Mayor, thank you. Given that I think there is some research and support of ranked choice voting with no districts in a small city, arguably serving the goals of the California Voting Rights Act, the same or better than districting would. at its core, part of the finding of the Santa Monica case for small cities. What would be the your advice in terms of our considering moving forward with a referendum at the next available election to see if the voters wanted to do this? And would that buttress our legal position if the voters so chose? And then the last part of that, in terms of, let's say, the Supreme Court finally decided something, or we decided to go ahead and try it because of under the argument that this serves the end of the voting rights law, the goal of the voting rights law, and we have referendum support for that question. Does that buttress the legal position, and then what would it cost for us to put a referendum on the ballot?
I'll answer the
On a
last
regular-
one.
on a regular
Yeah,
cycle, not a special
On the regular
election.
cycle, that one's easiest. It's usually about, $30,000 is the typical price we get quoted from the county to add a standalone, not a standalone, but add an initiative question to
Okay.
an existing ballot.
Okay.
And then on the other questions, I do think it would buttress the position. Voter approval lets us tap into the general power of the voters under the state constitution to make decisions regarding their own communities. That gives us a better position than simply a council decision.
Okay.
I agree with that. It's noted, though, we still have to overcome this provision in the elections code, if that were to be the goal. And there is time to still put something on the ballot for November. And one option would be to put it on the ballot, recognizing that there's an inherent cost in that, see if the voters approve it. If they don't, so be it. If they do, also so be it. Then assess and make it an option, and then assess whether to implement it. Because between November 22 and 24, there's time to see what the Supreme Court does. Everyone expects them to issue a ruling well before 24, so sometime early next year. Then we get a ruling, and it's sort of between the ruling and having voter authorization, assess it, but recognize that we would still likely draw a challenge, because we'd be, to my knowledge, the first general law city to try ranked choice voting by voter approval. So we might become a test case, and then it's a matter
Also
of...
might trigger a lot of amicus briefs and support.
Oh, certainly. I'm not saying we're guaranteed to lose. I'm saying we are...
Quick question, one more, promise.
Yes.
What's the deadline for our making this decision for the November ballot?
The deadline to put something on the November ballot is August 12th.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from council?
Yeah.
Susan?
This is extremely interesting. Allow me to just comment. I am confident that the public prefers to vote for every council rather than one representative. I'm 100% confident. So if we could put that on a referendum, can we remove districting?
That would be the,
Is
that would be the point.
So the question is, if we put shifting back to at-large on the ballot, we could do so. The cities that have tried that have mostly not been successful when the Voting Rights Act challenges arrives, with one or two exceptions.
With
I
rank,
want to clarify my question.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't mean that, it just shows what the voters want. It doesn't guarantee that what the result of that would be. But, so you're saying that by the referendum for ranked choice voting, would that automatically, okay, how would that affect a council member's ability if they had to move?
So if the voters approved a authorization to switch to ranked choice voting and go back to at-large with ranked choice voting, that would take effect with the next election.
right.
So all current council members would remain elected, well, the three that are elected at large and the one that's elected by district, and then in November thereafter. Everyone is elected under a regime remains elected under a regime. So nothing changes, unfortunately, until you're re-elected at large, if that makes sense.
Yes, it makes sense.
But it also means that those who are elected by district or everyone's remains the same rules under which they're elected for the full term. Nothing can change during your term, would be a better way to phrase it.
Right.
Okay, and the only way to do this is, there's no way to do it like a petition. It has to be a referendum. Like if we gathered, 7,000 signatures, could we do it this time?
I mean, those are legally the same thing. In other words, the council can put it on the ballot, or the voters could put it on the ballot. Either way, it can be put on the ballot through the proper initiative process with the appropriate steps. So the voters could put it on the ballot, so too the council can put it on the ballot.
Yes, I guess I was hoping that if we had enough support, we could just initiate it ourselves.
Any other?
With this coming election, that voters.
I'm not sure I'm quite tracking your question.
Voters-
Is there time to get it on the next election? Yes, there is, on the November 22 election. Is there a way to do it without being on the ballot? No.
Oh, I see, because the ballots are pre-printed in Ventura County, we can't just have our own, yeah. I get
Yeah,
it.
exactly. So,
I get
and
it,
that's
yeah.
that August 12th deadline. If the
Yeah.
council wanted to put it on the ballot, there's still time between now and August 12th, although the window is closing.
Thank you.
All right, well, any more questions? Randy?
So, you said questions. I thought we were already in discussions.
No, we
the
haven't
way it
taken
was
public
going.
comment. Do you have a question?
Well, so let's go back to what Souza was saying, or let's just go back to the referendum in general. So, we can still appeal down the road the way this body is elected if the city of Santa Monica prevails in their court, in their lawsuit, correct?
Yes.
We don't necessarily have to go to this, what's it called, CVR?
Ranked choice voting. No, the depending on what the state Supreme Court does, whether they find for Santa Monica or the plaintiffs, and depending on how, if they find for Santa Monica, how they rule about the law generally, that does create the opportunity, if it's useful, to declare we're under that umbrella and switch back.
So,
depending on how they rule.
versus paying for the referendum and gathering signatures, we could sit this out and wait for that ruling to take place and then make a decision. The next council can make that decision as to what they can or cannot do, correct?
Yes, that's also an option.
And then I have comments when we get into the discussion.
Do you have a question?
Yeah, just to clarify one point there, I don't believe we have to gather signatures to put a referendum on the ballot. That could be done by council action.
Correct. The council alone could put something on the ballot.
Okay. Any public comment on, we have one, Jeffrey Starkweather.
We'll add you. Thank you. I do have a question for Matt, but you can answer it after I'm done. It just occurred to me. If the voters put it on the ballot, as opposed to the city council, number one, would that strengthen the case, and that would it make it less easy to sue the city since the voters did it rather than the city council? So that's just a question. The second one would be, if the voters put it on, who pays for the election? And those are just questions. But anyway, I would think that would strengthen the argument if the voters put it on the referendum. Number one, I think we need to get back to citywide elections. If you look at the numbers here and you look at the case, our case is so much more overwhelmingly legally than Santa Monica. They had 30% in districts. Our highest is 13.2% in any district of the minority population. And the other thing I found interesting reading the appeals court case was that they were mentioning what the district court said, and the district court made I guess it would be not binding, but they made a factual assertion that ranked choice voting systems as alternative to district voting would, quote, enhance Latino voting power. So the one court, the court that actually ruled against them, said that this would be a choice. So it seems to me that it's always good to get the voters' opinion on something like this, rather than the council just changing. So I would strongly favor putting it on the ballot, both changing to at large. Anyone who's ever run elections knows when you're doing an at-large election, it's a lot easier to get a minority elected because you can concentrate your vote on that person than it is single districts, particularly when you don't have the numbers. And also, I think adding the ranked choice voting, putting those together would strengthen our case. So I don't know that we need to implement it. Like Matt said, we could vote it in and wait to see when the Supreme Court case, or we could go forward to see if anyone sues us. But, you know, we don't have to actually implement it. I don't know if they could sue you before you implement it. And so I think it would be a worthwhile thing to get a voice of the community that they would like to have be able to vote for each council member and be able to hold each council member accountable for what they do, as opposed to being only like 1,500 voters, you know, voting in people. Because there's no issues that just, or very few, that just represent these small little districts in our city. Everything affects everybody in the city. So I'm strongly in favor of putting this on the ballot. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Bill Miley?
Good evening, Bill Miley. So I know how this works, and I also know that only chartered cities in California, chartered law cities, have so far adopted it. So it seems to me that the question is kind of rhetorical. Now, in past elections, we have had probably at the most 3 candidates for any one positions, except when we were citywide. In the future, if the state law or court decisions allow general law cities this option, and we routinely have more than 2 candidates for a position, I'm in favor of adopting it. If we don't have more than 2, we don't need it. However, even though we've gone now to districts and probably will stay there for a while, it seems to me that we don't have more than 2 candidates for an elected position, so we probably don't need it. My reasons for adopting it sometime, if approved, would be it allows multiple choice selections rather than yes and no, especially then when there are several credible candidates. But on the other hand, you can always just vote for one and not do the ranked choice. It obviously supports credible candidates, or it obviously supports those candidates who are considered credible to increase their odds of being elected and contributing, hopefully, to the public benefit. And it promotes a decision right away rather than a runoff. So I'm not sure we should do anything right now. And just to give you an example, there's no commentary in public comments on emails about that. Nobody in the TV audience or the community has said anything about this other than Jeffrey and me. So apparently there's no interest, or there's no understanding, or they don't even know about it. Thanks.
Thank you, Bill. Any comments on Zoom, Gail?
100.
If there's anyone in the Zoom queue who would like to speak on this item, if you would please use the raise hand function now.
Okay, let's move on to discussion. Souza, go ahead.
Well, my first thought is that I'm strongly in favor of this because we're a small
Microphone.
county. Very difficult to find people willing to step up, and this has actually done the opposite. The districting has done the opposite of what the voter rights, or whatever it's called, voting rights, was intended for. If the public understood this, I believe that they would be in favor of it, because right now, just to clarify what I'm trying to say there's 3 qualified candidates, but they all live in 1 or 2 districts. And there's a 3rd district, and nobody has stepped up. Like, we have a situation now where there's no one living in one of the districts, and we have no, probably someone will step up. But I remember clearly back in the 1990s, for at least that decade, it was not unusual when there were empty seats to have up to 7 candidates running for those 2 seats. And it was very lively, and people wanted to run. There's other reasons why people might not be running that I want to discuss at another meeting. But I think the benefits of our small town having ranked choice voting, what's in the benefits are greater than possible problems ahead. Yeah. I mean, the problems wouldn't come from within the community. If perhaps I'm not fully understanding what risks we're taking, but there's no risk in having the referendum on the ballot. There's no risk in that, is there?
I'm not sure I would say no risk, because we'd be the first to try it. Someone might try to pull it off the ballot, contending we don't have the right to do so. Courts recently, especially in Ventura County, tend to not look kindly on challenges that stand in the way between the ballot box and the voters. So the court's likely, if that challenge was filed, to say, no, come back after the voters do or do not approve it. But there is a risk, and there are cases recently in other matters where folks have filed to stop something from even going to the voters. So I can't say that there's no risk.
Could I ask a question about that? Are you saying that the risk would come from within Ventura County or from the state? Or both?
All of the above. In other words, any person around the state could file the suit contending that the voters have no right to vote in a general election and ranked choice voting.
Somebody has to be first.
Correct.
Ryan?
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, we had the same issue, Souza, with the Measure V election against Golden State Water. There was a lawsuit filed to invalidate us even getting it on the ballot. So the first hearing we had to win was saying that they weren't going to do it. And the judge in that decided they were not going to stop or decide the legality of what we were trying to do prior to the election. So that is, it's a little bit different circumstance though. And I'll leave that to Matt because it's not exactly the same thing, but it was a challenge, a preemptory challenge before you got to the election. They let the election move forward and then it postponed the implementation of what had passed until the court case got settled. So it is a possibility. And the reality is that if it's challenged, then we are going to be in a position of either folding or spending probably a significant amount of money to defend. And that's the risk if it gets challenged. If we want to move forward with it, even if we just want to preserve the invalidation action, which is usually what it falls under a writ of mandate, that we have to fight that. And then we'd have to fight it afterward as well, only if it passed. And then there's probably not going to be any clarity on that coming out of the court or the legislature anytime soon. That not that I've heard of or anybody else I believe is aware of. So it is. We would be running a risk of being stuck in a litigation defending what the public voted for if they vote for it.
May I ask Ryan a question? Ryan, what did you mean that rather than fighting it, we could just, I wouldn't want to spend a lot of money fighting this or any money, but did you say we could just fold it?
Well, if they were to challenge it, we could say that we give up the case and then it would be invalidated as an action that we took that wasn't proper as a council. And that's what the lawsuit that Golden State filed said, that what Casitas did in passing putting on the ballot and passing a motion to put on ballot a tax measure to a Mello-Roos property tax, they said was an improper use of the Mello-Roos tax. So they were saying it was invalidated. They had a litany of reasons. The judge said, look, we're going to let the election go out. We're not going to cloud the election. Let's see what the electorate wants to do, and then we'll come back. But the amount of work it took during that, now I did it all for free, but I don't know what Casitas spent, but it was probably in the neighborhood of $25,000 to $50,000, and then it got appealed.
Higher.
On top of that to the Court of Appeals, and then we were stuck in the Court of Appeals for a while, and then we were waiting to see if the Supreme Court would bring it up. They denied it, and that was when it was finally allowed that they could start the eminent domain action using the Mello-Roos money. So that initial litigation to defend the right to move forward was not inexpensive. And that, of course, was Golden State with essentially bottomless pockets going after it. We don't know who the opponent would be, but if the state wanted to jump in or some other group, we'd have to anticipate that if they were going to litigate it, it would be expensive.
Randy?
So follow up just on that comment, it seems to be in this report that the Governor Newsom is not for this. So I would imagine that might be one body that might want to contest this. This is my my take, and I'm going to try and be considerate how I say it. But we got led into some nonsense when we went to an elected mayor. This city was functioning well by itself. Elections were good. People that ran were elected. And then somehow, some way, we got led into, let's get an elected mayor because that's better for us. And I'm going to be honest with you, it hasn't been. It cost that first mayor $10,000 to run. It cost this mayor $20,000 to run. It's never cost anyone anywhere near that amount of money to run for an office in this community. And then it also had people hire handlers or hire people to manage their thing. Bill Miley was my, whatever you want to call it, my handler. Bill. Before that, it was, I'm just saying, it didn't cost anything. And we didn't have a community that was divided, and we didn't have people looking for divisive things to pit council people about when we all want what's best for this community, and we probably agree on 99%. So here we are again, trying to play with something which I just don't see the benefit in. Now, I haven't had to run in a district contest yet. You know what? So be it. My attitude on running for council in this community is, if I'm doing well and I represent the community well, and the community will reward me with another vote of confidence. And if the community doesn't, it doesn't. And that's just the way it goes, no matter what system. But to start playing with more hocus pocus and more stuff that, first of all, I don't even know how you could communicate how to vote on this. Look what happened with the mayor. All of a sudden we elect the mayor and everyone thinks the mayor is the mayor of Ojai and that he or she has more status and more gravitas than the rest of us elected officials. The reality is the mayor gets to put something on the agenda without a second. That's all the mayor gets. That's it. And he or she performs the function of the mayor that used to be done on a rotational basis. So that's all I'm trying to say here is I don't know why we're even contemplating this, much less trying to educate the community on it, when you can see by the questions we're asking tonight, none of us know anything about it. So you obviously know where I stand. If it's not broken, don't fix it, and we should have never done the mayor.
Bill?
I'm not ready to take a position on this, but I do want to take a couple points at issue with what was stated. I think we do have something broken in the fact that the votes to elect a council member have shrunk considerably. And that, frankly, tends to have its own biases and it's listed. The Court of Appeals case went into that exhaustively, and those points are even stronger the smaller the city we get. I think there is a sense that the costs of districting go up, the dysfunctional aspects of districting go up the smaller the city you are. I think that's fairly clear. I'm not ready to take a position on whether it's worth $30,000 to put it on the ballot. I'm just not. I'm not ready to make that decision tonight. I want to commend the city attorney for an excellent review, for me to think about, for all of us to think about, and talk to our constituents, and see if there is support for this because it does cost $30,000. But I would take issue with the idea that nothing's broken now. I think the small city districting has some profound dysfunctional aspects to it.
Yeah, and I would agree with that, Bill, and we just don't have enough people, really. My concern is this going to create any work for staff? You know, it's a good idea, it's bad timing, just because we can't give staff, they're already overworked and already involved in a litigation. So I would really be opposed to giving James and staff more work at this point. It's inhumane. So I think we just need to keep that in perspective too. Randy?
I just want to clarify this. We've had one round of voting for Sousa's seat in a district. There was no chaos, no confusion, nothing. Now, granted, it was done. Let me finish. It was done during COVID under different circumstances, but the rest of us have not had to do that. So before we can say it doesn't work, I'm saying we've got a system, work within it. Now, if you didn't like the outcome of your election, say so.
Hey, I'm here.
Okay? That's what I'm saying. So obviously, it did well for you.
But let me tell you about that.
But all I'm trying to say is, again, we experimented, and that's just not my opinion. There's a lot of people that dislike the dysfunction of this mayor seat in this community. And it's not the person, it's the seat. So it's important to clarify that. And you guys want to spend $30,000, or you want to have another conversation, you have it. But you guys see where I am on this.
Susan?
Go for it.
Okay, gather my thoughts again. First of all, just two small but important corrections. The amount of money that you quoted for the mayor's seat is the same for a city council seat. I don't see, well, I'm
Nope.
sorry, but go look at my you can go look at my.
You can look at my records.
Yeah. I don't think there's a difference as far as running a campaign. It's the same, whether you're a city council member or the mayor. And from my experience, it was very difficult being limited to so you also said the community is electing you. It's not true. Your district of I think I ended up getting maybe, what was it, 700 votes? The difference was very small.
35.
35 votes?
That's what you won by.
35 votes.
Yeah, I think it's like 700 voters per
Yeah.
district, yeah.
And I forget the cost of my campaign, but I spent half my campaign funds, I swear, were spent trying to explain to people what District 4 voting meant. I took out full-page ads explaining that even though, the whole scenario, that even though you're voting, only the people in a limited district can vote, those people are actually voting for the other people, because those people can't vote for you. The other people can't vote for you. Does that make sense? I had explained that, and I had points, and it was my hardest. It was a far more challenging campaign than running at large. So it'll be interesting to see how it goes for you. Now, it could be that my district was particularly different because it's very spread out.
Well, your signage were above grand.
Hey, no crosstalk, please. Council, can we bring it back to the chair? Thank you.
But my thinking
Chair,
is that
I'd like-
this conversation about the mayor is really, to me, different from what I think it's good that we had the discussion. I completely agree with the comments made about spending the money, staff time, taking risks. I don't want to do that. I think it's still important that we're discussing it. There's a point I wanted to make. I'll just say that that we did bring up the mayor. Didn't we have a vote on whether to continue and we could do that again at any point, right?
Yeah, the voters reaffirmed the elected mayor process in 2018.
Yeah, and we could bring it up. I mean, I won't, but if somebody wants to bring it up again, we can put that back on the ballot. Correct? Yeah.
Bill?
Yeah, I would just like to say, this is a receive report. I think it's time just we receive the report and read and understand it and talk to constituents.
Okay, agreed. Well, thank you, staff, for all your work on this.
Does Ryan have a word?
No, he already spoke.
And I just to clarify, I believe it was 2016 when the voters reaffirmed the elected mayor. I was wrong on 18. But the voters did recently reaffirm it, and they could always
I
adjust
think,
it.
Matt, wasn't it? It was on the ballot for the directly elected, and then it was another about 2 to 4 years. I think we had another.
That's right.
It was on the ballot twice, but I think it. I don't know if both were, but I know the year because the first one was, "Do you want it?" And then 2 or 4 years, and they said yes and 2, and then I think went back again for 2 or 4, and it was reaffirmed at 2.
Correct.
That's correct.
Yeah, before my time, so don't blame me. All right, any other, let's move on. Council member reports? Go ahead, Bill.
Yes, first of all, I want to commend our research citizen activist that's still in the audience, Mr. Starkweather, who is putting me to shame with his thorough research, and he is almost singly responsible for the county recognizing that level of service is not the way to handle projects. It encourages sprawl, discourages affordable housing, and generally inhibits the repurposing of blighted buildings. And we, I believe, recently got notice from the county that they are officially directing the switch from LOS to VMT. And I think our citizen activists should take accolades for accomplishing that with his research. Number 2, as mentioned by the city manager, the school board is welcoming ideas for revenue offset through programming of a proposed community pool and different design aspects and how that might affect revenue. And I think I really appreciate the way that we, under city manager's leadership, and I assume with the mayor's concurrence, that we are moving to the Park and Rec Commission to look at this. That's the way we do things, openly and transparently, and I look forward to the deliberation. And finally, the mediation that Mr. Haney, Councilperson Haney mentioned, all we can say about it, it was positive experience. It seems like it's going in a positive direction. But we did have a little chuckle when the mediator at one point says, well, just have your city's PIO handle communication this, and we're kind of like, well, we have another hat for the city manager now, our PIO, who kind of, no, we don't have that kind of staff support. So it was kind of interesting. But we definitely, I think, accorded the city in general, I think accorded itself well in that mediation.
One of many.
Okay, any other council member reports?
Comments? Just
We're on,
reports.
yeah, reports. City manager's report?
Yes, I have, sorry. 2 quick things. One, our events and public information coordinator, Robin Godfrey. So we actually do have one now.
That's right.
We were talking about how at the end of each meeting I list a bunch of events and try to remember all the dates, and so she was kind enough to put together a slide that we'll be bringing for each meeting. So for our quiet, sleepy town, these are the events in the next couple of weeks, and these are just kind of the events coordinated through the city. So there's plenty more, but we have Thursday, May 26th, 10 a.m. at Libby Fountain. We're gonna have the coffee with Chief Rivera and myself, and so that's open for anybody who wants to come and talk public safety or anything else in the city. So we'll have that this week. Saturday and Sunday, May 27th to 29th at Libby Park, we have Art in the Park coming back and returning to the park, which is exciting. Monday, May 30th at noon at the Bowl, we'll have the Memorial Day Patriotic Concert. Saturday, June 4th, coming through Ojai is the Ojai Valley Century Ride through the bike trail. Sunday, June 5th, coming through Ojai, the Mountains to the Beach Marathon. That will have some impact on Ojai Avenue that we're coordinating with our Public Works and our police department. And then the big one, the return of the Ojai Music Festival during its more regular hours. I think last year they had a modified schedule, so that will be Thursday, June 9th through Sunday, June 12th. So those are the events in the next couple weeks. And then, like we mentioned, we have a rec commission where they'll talk about the pool. And we have a planning commission meeting where we're planning to bring the development agreement for the affordable housing projects scattered throughout town. And so a lot of activities over the next couple weeks, and all that information can also be found on our webpage. So we wanted to show that. And then as far as the next council meeting, we do have several items for the next regular council meeting. We have our public hearings for the assessment districts, for the library contract, which those are annual items, budget workshop. And then we're planning to bring the remainder of the arts appointments and potentially some other commissioner appointments. And then we'll have a presentation recognizing or celebrating Pride Month, so we'll have that as well. And then last is we are scheduling a special council meeting to go to update the council on the next step for the ATP right-of-way acquisition this Thursday at 5:30, I believe, was the time we finalized. So that is another meeting. So those are the events over the next couple weeks.
Thank you, James. A lot happening, and thanks to Robin for making such a nice list.
Thank you.
Okay, future agenda
Wait,
items.
I didn't get to do my
Okay, I'm sorry, go
my
ahead.
report. Well, first I want to thank Chief Jose Rivera for his participation and his deputies and the dog at the annual Park and Rec open house.
Open house, yeah.
And I couldn't attend, there was a family wedding and other events, but I saw the photographs on Facebook, so wonderful. And the videos, and, you know, you could, and it's exactly the kind of outreach that I like to see, you know, with the community. So thank you so much for spending the day there. It was wonderful. And then I wanted to make the council aware, you probably are aware, that there is a big controversy happening over the Camp Ramah expansion. I listened to the recording, and I'll forward you an email that I got. I won't read it all, from one of the residents. I've gotten several. I don't know if this was, some of these emails were just addressed to me, so I don't know if you received them. So I'll forward them tonight. And tomorrow's actually the last day to comment. I know that I drive that area, I share the concerns, so I'm going to be sending in a public comment as an individual council member. So, I mean, they're looking for city support, is what they're looking for. You know, they've already, yeah. And I hope the MAC meetings become video recorded, because you can't see the, you know, of course, the slides, but just to listen to that public, to the recording reminded me how important, because we can't always go there on Monday night, but to listen to the recording seems super important.
Mm-hmm.
So, and thank you to those that were there in person. Thank you.
Are you coming Wednesday or?
Tomorrow night?
Yeah.
I was hoping that we had the ATP meeting, so I wouldn't have to go. I don't know yet.
Good try.
I'll talk to you.
And I would just like to reiterate what Susan said. It was such a great event on Saturday at the Parks and Rec. So thanks to Louise and the staff, because
Yeah,
it
the
was
rec
really
team
fun.
pulled that together.
And
yeah.
Sam, the dog, was a huge hit. And I learned that Blatz in German means lie down. You must know that, right? Because the police officer kept saying, Blatz, Blatz.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's true. Who knew? Okay, future agenda items?
Real quick, Mayor, my grandchildren love that too, and we have pictures of them in the off-road vehicle. And,
Star.
yeah, so we did soccer at 8, and I'm sitting there watching the grounds going, well, it's 9-something, it's 10-something, when are they setting up here? So, yeah, you guys pulled it together real quick. Real quick.
Thank you.
Okay, no future agenda items? Okay, well, thank you all for a peaceful and a productive meeting, and happy birthday to Souza. We're adjourned.
Oh, don't you want to know who the